Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Planning Commission for February 28th, 2022. At this time, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Rasmussen for roll call.
Commissioner Britton.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Chair Frazier.
Here.
Commissioner Knable.
Here.
Commissioner Rasmussen. Here. Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Wright.
Here.
Thank you. This time we'll move on to item 3, which is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Commissioner Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wright. Any discussion on the motion? Otherwise, everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Now we'll move on to open forum, item 4. Open forum is a chance for anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on something that is not on tonight's agenda. So if you did pick up an agenda outside, if there's an item that you want to talk about that's already on the agenda, you'll have a time to do that later. This is an opportunity to talk about things that are not on the agenda tonight. So at this time, if anyone would like to speak on something that's not on the agenda, you can step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. All right, at this time, I'll close open forum. Item number 5 is Chair's explanation of the hearing process. The Planning Commission is a volunteer advisory group to the City Council. One of the Commission's functions is to hold public hearings and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. The purpose of these public hearings is to provide an opportunity for each applicant and citizens to present information, ask questions, and express opinions. Since these proceedings are televised and recorded for the public record, anyone wishing to speak must step up to the podium and give their name and address before addressing the Commission. Staff reports are prepared and provided to the applicant and Planning Commission in advance of the meeting. The first step in the hearing will be for staff to present a summary of the report. The applicant will then have an opportunity to briefly explain the proposal and provide additional information or comments. Anyone wanting to speak in favor or against the proposal will then be heard. Upon completion of the testimony, the hearing will be closed to public comments. The Planning Commission will then discuss and act on the matter. 2 complete agenda packets are available for viewing on the back table. Please do not remove those items. The City Council will act on these items at their meeting on Wednesday, March 16th, 2022, which starts at 7 p.m. And with that, we'll move on to item 6. 6.1 is the Pine Harbor Church Edition, case PP 2022-004, with Emily Schmitz presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. The first application before you this evening is a preliminary plat submitted by the Pine Harbor Church. For those of you who are unaware, the Pine Harbor Church is located south on Highway 61, just south of the River Oaks Golf Course and just north of the Pine Coulee development there off of Highway 61. You may be familiar with the Pine Harbor Church because you did have an application recently before you at the end or middle of 2021 as they are bursting at the seams and needed some additional classroom space. So they did move a modular structure onto their site, approximately 10,000 square feet. To support that increased enrollment. As a part of that approval, we took a closer look at the property lines at the time, which, as you can see, this blue line extended nearly to the other side of Highway 61. So we said, as a part of this condition, let's clean those property lines up with a plat. So before you this evening is that preliminary plat. They're calling it the Pine Harbor Church Edition, which brings that property line where it should be, for lack of a better way to put it. It dedicates that MnDOT right-of-way for Highway 61, cleaning things up a bit. We are able to get those standard DNU easements around the perimeter of the site as well for future use. Probably not tomorrow, but in the very distant future, we will have those. So with that, I will leave the recommendation before you. I believe the applicant is in the audience if you do have specific questions for him as well.
Thanks, Emily. Any questions for staff? All right, would the applicant like to add anything? No? All right, thank you. All right, at this time, anyone wishing to speak for or against the application can step to the podium and add your name and address to the record and address. With all applications tonight, there is going to be a 3-minute time limit. for people speaking. That's just so we can get through everybody tonight, all right? So if anyone would like to speak for or against the application, you may step to the podium. Okay, we'll close public hearing on that application. Any discussion from commission? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion.
Motion to approve conditions stipulated in the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Britton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Rasmussen. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to item 6.2, which is Pizza Ranch, cases PUD 2022-014, CU 2022-015, and SP 2022-016, with Cody Flannery presenting.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Before presenting this case, I'd just like to introduce myself quickly. My name is Cody Flannery. I am a planner with Bolton & Mink. I've been providing some auxiliary planning support to Cottage Grove planning staff for the last several months as we all try and manage this growing caseload together. So let's get into it. So the Pizza Ranch case is a threefold application. We've got an application for a plan unit development, also known as a PUD, site plan review, and a conditional use permit application. Just to refamiliarize, refamiliarize yourselves and the audience, this site is located at the intersection of Hardwood Avenue and Harkness Avenue South. A little bit more background into the project. The Pizza Ranch case was originally presented in 2019. It received full council approval in that year. However, no building permits were issued during that 365-day period, and approvals have since expired. So the applicant has returned here today to repropose this project. They're proposing an 8,046 square foot family-style restaurant with 236 seats. In addition to the family-style restaurant, there will also be a pickup window which implicates this plan unit development that we'll discuss shortly. In addition to the restaurant, or in conjunction with those family-style seating spaces, are 5 community spaces that you can see divvied up here by these blue lines, In addition, there's a larger arcade called the Fun Zone that is also something that we'll discuss in a few minutes. Planning considerations, this parcel is zone mixed use. The proposed use is consistent with current zoning and with the 2040 comprehensive plan. Reviewing what a plan unit development functions as in terms of land use regulatory technique. It's a tool that provides additional flexibility for us as we go about development that allows us to do things with a parcel that the underlying zoning district wouldn't regularly allow us to do. More or less, it allows us to make more efficient use of a site and to maximize a site's full potential. Examples of things that we can do under a plan unit development include deviations from standardized setbacks, parking requirements, building materials, and landscape materials, and that kind of thing. There are elements of all of these that'll show up throughout this case, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. Standard though with all restaurants in Cottage Grove, in any zoning district, a conditional use permit is required for a drive-through window. Thinking about access and pedestrian connectivity to the site, 3 frontages, one off Harkness Avenue, one off Hardwood Avenue, and one off Oakwood Park Drive. The access point mainly for vehicles is going to be here, just off Oakwood Park Drive. There will be additional pedestrian connectivity coming in from Oakwood Park, and additionally from the Muddy Cow parking lot to the south. As part of this development, the applicant will install 5-foot sidewalks along the northern boundary of the property, as well as a 4-foot sidewalk to connect their parking lot to the parking lot of the Muddy Cow. Here we get into one of those flexings underneath the the planned unit development. So the code by standard requires that all drive-up windows have a six vehicle stacking zone. However, as the applicant might explain later for you, their business model there's no two-way communication device, the traditional squawk box, if you will, at their drive-up window. Customers will place their orders ahead of time. No one will be placing an order at the window itself. So there's really not so much of a need to have the full six-car stacking space. So that's one flexibility that they're asking for under the PUD. On the converse, they're offering more parking options. The code requires for a building of this size with this seating, 79 stalls to be provided. The applicant is agreed to provide 98 stalls. Those additional stalls will also support that arcade use of the fun zone within the restaurant. Thinking about the architecture, the materials proposed by the applicant include a manufactured fieldstone veneer, glass windows, and an engineered composite wood for the upper siding and trim on the elevation. Cottage Grove Building Code requires that 65% of the materials for commercial structures are Class 1 materials. The manufactured stone veneer and the glass contribute to those Class 1 requirements. However, the applicant is asking for flexibility on these composition requirements at varying levels throughout these elevations. We'll go through these in just a minute, but it's worth noting that the flexibility that they're asking for and the deviations with these elevations is consistent with similar developments in the area and around the city. So you can see on the western elevation, they're proposing 63% Class 1 materials. On the northern elevation, 50%. To the east, 44%, and to the southern elevation, 51%. Moving on to their lighting plan, the applicant's proposing a cove lighting element around all elevations on the building, and a tube lighting element around the south, north, and west elevations of the building, leaving the tubing off the eastern side to avoid any kind of lighting issues with users of the adjacent Oakwood Park. Moving on to landscaping, the required landscaping for this parcel is shown here on the screen and in your packets. What the applicant is proposing is almost identical to what would be required by the landscape code. However, you'll see a deficiency in the 13 coniferous trees versus the 18 that are required. The applicant beyond this is proposing to plant 25 coniferous shrubs, which far surpasses the shrub proposal from the requirement from the code. In addition, the landscape ordinance requires that 8% of the interior of a parking lot be landscaped. The applicant is proposing landscaping that would comprise 8.7% of the interior parking lot. As part of this landscaping plan, no tree mitigation is required. The applicant is within their limits for qualifying tree inches to be removed. So I'll lay the recommendation before you. I invite any questions that you have at this time, and I also understand the applicant is in the audience if you have questions for them.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? No? All right, if the applicant would like to approach and add anything?
Thank you. Gary Wolliver with Verbecker Associates out of Reedsburg, Wisconsin. We're actually the site civil designers for this project. Architect is BRR out of Omaha, I believe. They're not here tonight, but I think they've pretty well addressed all the questions that the planners have had for them. As mentioned, this project was approved in 2019, and everybody knows what happens in the spring of 2020, that nothing really got built and nothing happened after that. So we're back again trying to move this project forward. I really don't have anything much to add for it. The only thing I would like clarification on is in the planning's recommendation, item 5, they recommend a 6-foot concrete along Oakwood Park Drive, and that was requested for us to change to 5 feet already. Just a clarification on that. Make sure that we don't get stuck in the middle on something with that. And then item 8, where it says a landscape or an landscape irrigation plan will be part of the final landscape plan. On our plan, we have a note on there that the installer will do the plan for it. And it's not on the landscape plan. It's just a note on there that prior to construction, the contractor would have to supply the actual detailed plan for irrigation. Other than that, I would entertain any questions that you might have. It's pretty straightforward. I know there was a question regarding a hydrant location that the city put the water main in across the site last year to Oakwood Park. The hydrant really didn't land in our, from what I can tell anyway, didn't land in our island. And so we actually have it to be removed, salvaged, removed, and extended. I can't remember, it's like 5 or 6 feet. But if it makes any difference, we could probably have the contractor stake the island first and just make sure that the two are compatible with each other. So otherwise, I really don't have anything else to add for it.
All right, thank you. Any questions for applicant? Commissioner Fisher?
I have one. So there was talk about the Class 1 materials that are being used and the thresholds that are normally required. And on all 4 elevations, you're asking for flexibility to do less. Can you just explain a little bit more why you're choosing the materials you are and why that's something you're asking for?
I will try.
Okay, we're listening.
I'd like to tell the architects that my expertise stops at your building line. So, a part of that, I think, is just because of Pizza Ranch is prototype, and that's what they're trying to get to, so that they look pretty much all alike. Other than that, I don't know that I can answer your question. I can get the architect on the phone if you want, but I really think it comes down to what Pizza Ranch is looking for in their prototype restaurants.
Right, so they're looking for uniformity in what their
Yes.
restaurant looks like here versus the
Correct.
rest. Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for applicant? Commissioner Stevens?
I have a quick question about stormwater for the site. So it looks like you're adding quite a bit more parking than what was planned for. Is that accounted for in the downstream storm sewer treatment system? Was that looked at?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the parking lot hasn't changed from 2019, and so we handled it at that point. And as far as this site, there's actually a regional detention basin that it's going to. So everything should be status quo for it.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, I have a couple. One of them probably you can answer, and that is, so I think a number of us were on the commission in 2019 when we originally passed it. And so are there any major changes from the plan that was submitted at that time and approved at that time?
Probably 2.
Okay.
One is the fact that the city put the water main across the site.
Okay.
So that's shown as existing conditions. And then obviously you guys improved Oakwood Park, so we added kind of the improvements that are adjacent to this site so that we could, number one, tie into the sidewalk on it and actually the curb and gutter on it. And one of the requests was to add 3 additional parking stalls for the drive-up window. And so that island along the north side was extended for three parking stalls.
Okay.
Other than that, there's nothing on it that has changed.
Okay. And then the other question, I don't know if there's somebody here from Pizza Ranch or works for Pizza Ranch, but just if there are other Pizza Ranch locations in the metro that use this drive-up window, whether there are issues with stacking, because obviously our code requires 6, they're asking for 3. If there are other instances of this working in the metro where there are other Pizza Ranch restaurants that have the same plan.
They did send a letter.
I'm already sponsoring on the franchise.
Sure, if you want to step up to the podium there.
It's recorded. Ernie Swanson from Stillwater, Minnesota. I also own the Oak Park Heights Pizza Ranch, and we have a drive-up window there. And basically, it's used only for pickup orders. The people are at the window for 2-3 minutes, and the stacking will have maybe 2 cars at the most on a busy Friday night, and that's the extent of it. Typically, there's only 1 or 2 cars in line.
Okay. Thank you.
In fact, our drive-up window, there's only room for 3 cars, and you're in a cul-de-sac.
Oh, okay.
Do you, just a quick question, do you limit the number of pickups you can, like per hour?
No.
All right.
But we run, pickups are big there. We run, on a night, we'll run 25, 30, 35 pickups. there's not a problem.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions? Thank you. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Again, there's a 3-minute limit. Anyone wanting to speak for or against the application can approach the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm David Olson, 8627 Jorgensen Avenue South, citizen of Cottage Grove. I want to comment about our Oakwood Park there to the east and north of the new restaurant. It's great that you are planning to add additional shielding to the parking lot lights on that side, on the east side, and you're refraining from the branding, lighting on that side as well. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. I know it's got to be different on the north side. That's where they drive up. That's traffic coming that direction. So obviously, you've got to have all that there to bring them in. I get that. But please do anything and everything you can think of to help us keep our park as a natural oasis. It's specifically there to get away from business, to get away from commercial life, right? Your location is going to be right there at the entryway to that park. How you maintain your landscape and patrol your parking lot will set the tone for the entire area. So we're counting on you. Thank you for coming to Cottage Grove, by the way. People here have been talking about a pizza ranch all the time for 3-4 years now. You're going to be successful, and I congratulate you on that in advance. And with that success, I wonder and honestly worry a little about the adequacy of our existing traffic control throughout the east side of our north gateway. But that's on us, right? Not Pizza Ranch. I believe the commission should approve this application subject to the contents of the staff report.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay, at this time, I'll close public hearing. I have a couple follow-up for staff. And Mr. Flannery, if you have answers. So the first thing was in the staff recommendation number 5. I think the applicant was saying there was a discrepancy between whether it's a 5-foot or a 6-foot sidewalk. The recommendation is 6. Is it supposed to be 6 or 5?
Yeah. I'm going to defer to Mike Mroslaw
Okay.
on that one.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. That is a typo. That should be 5 feet.
Okay.
That is consistent with the plans as with the submitted plans.
And then Mike, while you're up there, I'll ask the other one about number 8, and whether if the contractor provides the irrigation plan, is that the city's gonna be fine with that?
Yes, Chair. Our Assistant City Engineer, Amanda Meyer, has been working closely with them on the irrigation, so we are comfortable with that. And then I just want to address one other comment by the resident that just spoke. The applicant is removing some of the lighting on the north side of the building. There's supposed to be some banding on the north side as well along the drive-through to reduce the impacts on the surrounding park. They did remove that as well. So there's only one band on the north side to help reduce the impacts on the park. And then the lighting, the standalone parking lot lights will have shields on them to reduce flow or overshine onto the park, if that's a term.
Okay. And then the last question I had was, also based on the comment we got from the public, was just about the landscaping plan, and obviously we're doing a PUD, so there's some flexibility for them, but we get some flexibility as well. This is right next to a park, and on that east side is gonna be mostly, it looks like an employee entrance door and some things that probably should be shielded. Has the city worked with the applicant about providing as much landscaping over there as possible to shield the parking lot and the park from that?
It's pretty limited on the space they have on that side of the building due to setbacks for the parking. On the east side, excuse me, let me go to the site plan here. Due to setbacks for parking requirements, a lot of the landscaping is adjacent to Harkness or hardwood. There is some landscaping proposed over there. The applicant's been great to work with, so I'm sure if we had complaints or anything, they'll be willing to work with us if they had to plant additional plantings in that area if we have complaints.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for staff while they're up? All right, any other discussion from commission? Otherwise, I would look, Commissioner Rasmussen.
I guess in general regarding the drive-through window, this is not really a typical drive-up scenario, so I'm comfortable with their limited stack. And being under a little bit on class type 1 materials, according to their elevations, the way they're breaking up the elevations with the different materials, that's not a bother to me either. I do echo the comments of our speaker about being next to the park and maintaining that rear side of the building and the east side, making sure it's kept up well and screened as best as possible. But I'm excited for this project.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the PUD, the site plan, and the conditional use permit with the conditions stipulated in the staff report with the 2 corrections that were made on the record.
Okay. Do I have a second for that motion? I have a motion from Commissioner Fisher.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wright. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Move on to item 6.3, which is renewal by Andersen expansion, cases PP 2022-019, SP 2022-020, and V 2022-021 with Emily Schmitz presenting.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, number 2 this evening, for me anyhow, is an application from Renewal by Andersen, 3 separate applications: site plan review, preliminary plat, and that variance. As a reminder, Renewal's campus is located at the northwest corner of Jamaica Avenue and 100th Street. Their original operation started just at the corner, and of course they did some expanding, which I'll get into here in the background. Just to refresh everyone's memory, first approved in 1998, expanded in 2015. In 2018, they expanded, purchased an additional 9 acres just for truck and trailer parking. And then with the continued growth of their operations in 2019, they were approved for a 350,000 square foot expansion to the west. And of course, with their continued growth and operations, they are here this evening before you for an additional 330,000 square foot addition to that existing expansion that was completed in 2019. Before they're able to construct that building that does cross the property line that exists today, we will need to combine Outlot A, which was created as a part of their expansion in 2019. So that remaining 27 acres will be purchased by Renewal, combined to their Lot 1, Block 1, as you can see before you. I wanted to call out the drainage and utility easement that does currently exist over the water main that extends through the property. As a part of the expansion of the building, Renewal will be required to realign that water main as we need to maintain that connection to the main in 100th Street. So as you can see, that will push that water main easement further to the west. So we will be covered, and then again, we'll obtain those standard perimeter easements as a part of that platting process. So as I mentioned, 330,000 total square foot expansion directly to the west. 2 additional access points are proposed off of Hemingway Avenue, allowing access directly to the west side of that building. In addition, a guardhouse is proposed on the west end of that campus as well. I'll get some more details on that in the next slides. And again, their use continuing with the office, light manufacturing, warehouse, all within this same addition area. And then that variance that was approved for those loading docks to be adjacent to 100th Street is proposed as a part of the expansion as well, maintaining that row of loading docks with that approved variance. So as I mentioned, the guardhouse on the west end of that campus, it's a small building, and forgive me, I believe it was like a 10 by 10 or 10 by 11, small structure, enough, I'm imagining, for one individual to reside in. The materials we'll review as a part of the building permit process. We want to make sure that those exterior materials are complementing or align with the principal structure on the site. So we'll work through those details with the applicant through that building permit process. The parking on the site is certainly not being reduced, rather increased. An additional 250 passenger vehicle spaces are proposed, mostly in the rear of the building, and then some additional truck and trailer parking, which of course is being pushed further to the west, but a total of 281 spaces for those truck and trailer parking. As you know, if you've driven past Renewal by Andersen, they are bursting at the seams, so the additional parking will certainly be helpful for their operations. And of course, with all projects, as you've heard me say before, we do require a tree inventory to be completed. In this case, Renewal is required to mitigate some inches. They are proposing to plant those inches or mitigate them on the site as opposed to paying that mitigation fee. A lot of those mitigation is being taken care of as they're proposing between 6 and 10 foot plantings, specifically adjacent to 100th Street and Hemingway Avenue, to maintain those landscape buffers along those areas to the expansion. They will continue the berm along 100th Street as well as along Hemingway Avenue. I'll make note at the corner of Hemingway and 100th, we're still working through verifying if there is in fact a wetland in that corner. If there is, of course, we'll ask that they remove some of those plantings that they're currently proposing and probably disperse elsewhere on the site. If it's not verified to be a wetland, of course, we would let them maintain those proposed landscape plantings in that corner, and then of course would ask that they wrap that berm around. Any additional screening that we can get to the activity that happens on that loading dock side, we'll certainly ask the applicant to address. And with that, as a part of their proposed expansion, they are proposing some additional plantings in their existing berm. Where they expanded in 2019, they're proposing again to plant some 6 and 10 foot tall coniferous trees for year-round buffered and coverage of those loading docks. So of course, helping to mitigate some of those sightline issues from 100th Street that we've seen in the past. With the expansion, Renewal is proposing, of course, some additional signage. The 2 monument signs that they are proposing at the new access points on Hemingway Avenue will align with the other monument signs that you do see as a part of their campus. So with this approval, we will approve those monument signs and then, of course, the wall sign that again aligns with the existing wall sign on their current building. But we will review those more in depth as a part of the building permit review, but of course, make sure that they align with the approval this evening. And finally, the architecture proposed are, of course, Class A tip-up panels, which you see on their existing building today. So the addition will, of course, blend right in with the existing building, breaking up those facades every 100 feet with a little bit of variation in texture as well as some glazing throughout to make sure that we're breaking up the visual of those very long walls. And with that, there are 3 recommendations before you this evening. Of course, staff is available, but I know the applicant as well as Opus, who worked through their approval process, is available if you have specific questions for them as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? Would the applicant like to add anything?
Good evening, Commissioner Chair, members of the commission. My name is Phil Catnow with Opus 10350 Bren Road West, Minnetonka, Minnesota. On behalf of Opus and Renewal by Andersen, it's wonderful to be back here again. Admittedly, we didn't think we'd be back here this quickly, but it's exciting to see the growth. And really, I just wanted to take a moment to thank staff. We've worked through a lot of topics through this, and they've been wonderful to work with. And maybe the only point I just wanted to quickly raise is on condition number 25, we're just working with staff just to understand what is the amount that's being requested for the funding allocation by Renewal by Andersen pertaining to the trail extension and the turn lanes. We understand that that's part of it. We're just working, and I anticipate between now and ideally when we get an audience in front of city council, we'll be able to verify that. But certainly welcome any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you very much. All right, at this time, I'll open public hearing. Again, you're limited to 3 minutes, but anyone who wants to speak for or against the application can step forward and state their name and address.
Hi, Kate Holscher, 7903 113th Street South. Had a couple of questions more than anything. In my discussions with one of the planners, it had sounded like they were moving the, some of the traffic that was going onto 100th Street internally, because we get a lot of trailers that are being moved across the campus, but they use 100th Street as the main transport route. So I would love it if that actually was true and moves off of that street, because they're often going very slow and it's a 50-mile-an-hour street, so it's kind of dangerous. So looking at that, also adding more of the loading. There's a lot of flashing lights, green and red, that are quite obnoxious at night. So I don't know if there's any sort of berming or anything that can be done to shade that. So those are just the two questions. Otherwise, I mean, they've been great neighbors. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right, at this time, I'll close public hearing. Some from staff, or the applicant wants to field those two.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Ryan Burfeiner, Public Works Director, City Engineer. I can answer the truck question. Certainly with the new site, it is going to be, very contiguous property now, the building and all that parking, that'll be all connected. I think that'll definitely help with the concerns that were raised. The other thing with the NorthPoint development, that'll be discussed under the next item, and it was discussed in, great detail at NorthPoint's first approval, all the improvements we're going to do at 100th Street. There will now be a continuous center left turn lane. That's not there today, so trucks have to stay in that through lane of traffic to turn back in. Now they'll have a continuous left turn lane they can use as well, so that'll help to get truck traffic out of the through traffic on 100th Street.
Okay. And Ryan, we'll probably talk about timeline then for reconstruction of 100th Street at the next application then?
Correct, yep, that'll be talked in more detail.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And I think I can answer the other question as well that Emily did mention. There will be additional screening for the lights along the berm and new, coniferous trees added as well, so.
Okay. And all the lighting on the property meets state statute for bleed over on the property lines as well, so.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion by commission? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion.
I'd motion to approve preliminary plat, the site plan, and the variance, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Rasmussen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Britton. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. And up next, we'll go to item 6.4, which is NorthPoint, case SP 2022-022, with Emily Schmitz presenting.
All right, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, you'll be sick of me by the end of this evening, I promise you. The next application before you this evening, excuse me, is the Phase 1 site plan review for the NorthPoint development, or the Cottage Grove Logistics Park. As a reminder, the proposed logistics park is proposed just south of 100th Street, or just south of Renewal by Andersen, within the city's business park. little bit of a background or reminder, I know this has been before you just recently, but we did work through a master site plan with the developer for the Cottage Grove Logistics Park, which proposed 9 total buildings, or 3.4 million square feet of light distribution, manufacturing square footage for the entirety of the business park. We took a look at the master site plan, which outlined all of the details of the development of the site and said, these are our general guidelines. For each phase, come back with a site plan review so we can take a look at those details for each phase of the development to ensure that they're aligning. So as you can see, I've kind of outlined in yellow the first phase, which is 2 buildings, building 1 and 2, as well as the 105th right-of-way and an additional outline that I'll talk a little bit more in depth about as we continue forward. So the final plat proposed, again, as I had indicated, is for 2 lots, Lot 1 and 2, which will support Building 1 and Building 2, the 105th Street right-of-way, and then that other outlot as well. As I mentioned, this is the site plan for the Phase 1, so we take a look at all of the things that they're proposing with the site, the parking, the architecture, public improvements, screening, and just make sure that those are aligning with the already approved master plan. So more specifics on the parking, the developer is only required 385 parking stalls. As you can see, they are proposing 562 total. Now that combines passenger vehicle parking with truck and trailer parking on the site, but again, above that minimum required. As I've mentioned, tree mitigation or a tree inventory is required with all projects. As a part of the master site plan, the developer did conduct an individual tree inventory for the entirety of the site. As you can see, about 4,100 inches were required to be mitigated on the site. So what we're doing is we're taking a look at the master site plan as a whole, and each time a phase comes in for development, they will plant or are proposing to plant additional plantings above and beyond the minimum required landscaping. So we'll calculate those additional mitigated inches on site for each phase. And as they continue to build out the master site plan, as we get to that last phase, if they've not planted all of those mitigation inches on site, there will be a mitigation fee that will be required to be paid. And as I mentioned, they are planting the minimum required landscaping plus the additional to take care of some of those mitigation inches. In addition to the landscaping, the developer is proposing some quite substantial berming. I'll just hone in, of course, on Phase 1, but along the west side of Building Number 1, as well as along 100th Street on the north side of both Building 1 and 2, the berming is proposed about 10 feet in height with that additional landscaping is going to create a substantial visual buffer from those right-of-way areas and adjacent properties. This image you've seen before as a part of the master site planning process, but gives a good visual of the mature landscaping along those public rights-of-way. The architecture you've also seen before, the proposed architecture for the buildings or exterior materials for the buildings do align with those proposed as a part of the master site plan for this Phase 1. Again, they are breaking up these long walls of the building with some different textures, some brick material and things of that nature, as well as some windows and glazing. And then at the entrances, of course, they're proposing some metal canopies and windows as well. Here's where I'll get back to that outlot that I mentioned. It's about 7.95. I'll round up to 8 acres for lack of discussion, but the outlot is proposed to be dedicated to the city, which we will accept as a portion of the park dedication required as a part of the master site plan as a whole. We do plan some improvements to this park, which are still in the planning process, but this park will support, of course, future residential development to the south, to the north in the area. The applicant did conduct a noise study as part of the master site plan as well, and with that are proposing a sound wall along the west and south sides of the master site plan area, As a part of the first phase, as you can see, they're proposing to install the segment of the sound wall just south of Building 1 and just to the west of Building 2 to help protect, of course, any of the operation noise that may be happening as a part of that first phase to the folks to the south. In addition, they've provided a photometric plan for just Phase 1, so Buildings 1 and 2. The light does not exceed that 1-foot candle at the property lines on any of the adjoining sides. And I know we talked a lot in depth as a part of the master site planning process of the public improvements required as a part of Phase 1. But just to reiterate, the developer will be responsible for construction of 105th Street from Ideal Avenue to the roundabout. Improvements to Ideal Avenue, including the addition of some turn lanes. The same with 100th Street, the addition of some turn lanes and some improvements there. With that, I will leave the recommendation before you this evening. I know the developer is available for any questions. Staff, City Engineer, Public Works Director Ryan Burfeind as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff?
Yeah.
Commissioner Knable.
Will the sound wall be put up before or after the proposed road would be going in?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Knable, are you the sound wall?
That would be by the new 105th proposed. So you said they're going to build that sound wall there. Will that road be in first before that?
Yes, the sound wall along 105th will come with a later phase of the NorthPoint development. So right now, so this is about where the sound wall segment and then this, so 105th, to answer your question specifically, 105th will go in first and then the sound wall will come thereafter.
Any other questions for staff? Emily, just referencing back to Renewal by Andersen, which we just heard, and there was some discussion about 100th Street and when that was going to get reconstructed. Is that going to be kind of driven by when NorthPoint puts in the buildings then, and then they'll be working on that?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So these improvements are all required to be completed with Phase 1, everything on the screen. Right now, anticipating anyways, working with NorthPoint, that 105th Street would be completed in 2022, along with the 100th Street improvements would be 2022 as well, and Ideal Avenue would be 2023 is what the plan is at this point. And like Emily mentioned, really what all these roads will now be built to is what we call a 3-lane section. So you've got that through lane in each direction, a continuous center left, and then also right turn lanes as well. Real similar to like Hadley Avenue between 90th and 100th, with the addition of right turn lanes is what all these new roadways will be.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have one.
Commissioner
Did you guys
Fisher.
say that those road improvements are NorthPoint's responsibility to pay for and to?
That is correct. NorthPoint will be building all of those improvements as part of their project.
All right, if the applicant would like to add anything?
Good evening. Let me just close this out. Members of the commission and the chair, my name is Christina. I'm with NorthPoint Development. I just want to say that we're really excited to begin this Phase 1 development that is proposed before you tonight. As Emily mentioned, it is 2 buildings slated to start if all of the approvals go well in the spring of this year. It will be a staggered start. We have 2 buildings proposed. One will go first, and then a month or so later, the second one will begin. I don't have much else to say other than we are just really excited to be here in Cottage Grove, and the staff has been wonderful to work with. And with that, if there are any questions, I am here for that as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Wright.
I have one. Sorry. I think if I recall correctly, the businesses that'll go into it coming later, like they'll be identified later, or are they already identified that will go in?
Sure, great question. NorthPoint Development is primarily a speculative industrial developer. So we have received multiple
what we call RFPs, or requests for proposals for specific tenants. We have not signed any leases yet, but we do have some that we are kind of going back and forth on. But these are all built currently on spec development, so no tenants at this time.
Thank you.
Any other questions for applicants? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Again, you'll have 3 minutes if you want to approach and state your name and address and provide any comment.
Hi, my name is Sarah Wers. I'm at 8642 Grosse Pointe Avenue South in Cottage Grove. Am I able to speak on this as well as a separate issue and still?
Yes, yeah.
So my question with this is, the property goes up to the SNA, correct? Is the boundary?
So what I'll have you do is I'll just have you ask any questions and
Okay.
comments, and then when we close, staff is taking notes and they'll come up and address everything that's been raised.
Okay. So it appears to be very close to the SNA. I don't know where the boundary is between this property and the SNA, and if there's anything in between. With such a large development and such a small precious area, there's bound to be some kind of impact to that area from, a large industrial, trucking, manufacturing, all kinds of things going in and out versus what's there now, which is farm fields. So I ask that the commission please consider an EAW. I'm not sure how that would work with an adjacent property. I don't know how that works, but to please keep that in mind. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Hello, good to see ya. Good job. Okay, my name is Bonnie Matter, 6649 Inskip Avenue South. Thank you very much for being here and for letting me ask my questions. I just have a couple about this project. First of all, when I think it was on page 3, it was a big document, I think. But anyhow, on page 3, there was a 2040 land use map, and it looked like, and this was the first time I had seen this, where it looked like the SNA is now bordered by residential on each of the 3 sides, okay? So if you look at page 3. The other comment that I would make, apparently there's a Cyphers NorthPoint logistic project going in over at Lake Elmo. And they have very detailed traffic studies there. And I'm sure that with all of the business that NorthPoint does, all the building that they do, they've got a pretty good handle on what they can expect to generate. And I really think we need that, especially when we listen to Renewal by Andersen and what they're going to bring in now, just with this extension. So just from a planning standpoint, I think everybody needs to understand what kind of traffic are we talking about? Vehicle, trucks, tractor trailers, everything. And I think they've got a pretty good idea. They're really on top of everything. And that's what I've got for this go-around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Me again. Hi, do you want me to repeat my name?
Yes,
All right.
please.
Kate Holscher, 7903 113th Street South. So first of all, I just wanted to say I really appreciate the extra measures that NorthPoint is taking to mitigate sound and light, acknowledging that they are in the middle of neighborhoods. There's people right here. We have one way in and out of our neighborhood. It's Ideal. We already went through complete construction of Ideal, going down to 1 lane, all the mess of that, because of the water project. And now it's going to happen again. So I would just really ask that there's always a way in and out. I would love it if 105th and a way up to 100th was complete before Ideal was under construction. It's a mess getting in and out of there. And we already went through it once. We've talked a lot about traffic already. serious concerns about getting worse. We're already dealing with some of the construction traffic. We're seeing surveyors, we're dealing with the septic that's going in. Ideal, 2 lanes, right? There's no flaggers and they're parking in the street. So frequently it's going down to 1 lane, there's no flaggers. So I understand it's not a hugely busy street, but that's dangerous. So then we're adding more construction traffic, more traffic, and Ideal's not done yet. It's dangerous. So we need to look at those things. We also have talked about the roundabouts over and over, adding Renewal by Andersen traffic and then construction traffic and all of these additional people. I can't leave my house at 3 or 4 p.m. and go out through the roundabouts and actually expect to get out. It's any way that we go, it's backed up. So we're adding all of these extra employees. So fairly concerned about traffic if you hadn't figured that out. So thank you. I really appreciate your time in this.
Thank you. Any additional comment from the public? All right, at this time, I'll close public hearing. And then if staff or the applicant wants to follow up on some of the things that we heard about.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'll follow up on just a couple and then I'll turn it over to Ryan Burfine. But the development, and I think this will help, is not adjacent to the SNA. This will help. So here's the boundary of the, I suppose a corner might, but here's the boundary of the SNA, and this will be the boundary of NorthPoint. As Ms. Matter indicated, this is the area that she was pointing out on the 2040 comprehensive plan that's slated for residential development. And then in response to the question about an additional environmental review of a project of this size, an AUAR was conducted and completed for the business park area in 2017. So an AUAR is a planning tool that we use to kind of do a preliminary environmental detailed review of potential development ahead of it coming before you or getting this far. So we're kind of doing that environmental work ahead of potential development to, of course, support those additional expansions, excuse me, in our business park. So that was the clarification. And I'll turn it over to Ryan Burfine to talk just a little bit more about the traffic.
And Emily, just before you leave, I want to ask about the SNA. So they kind of share a corner at that top, at the southwest corner of the property. They kind of just share that corner, but then the property south of that triangle, that's going to be residential under the comprehensive plan, correct?
You're exactly right, Mr. Chair.
I guess I had one more question. Is that the proposed park that touches that corner then?
It is. Yep, so there'll be that connection there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thinking about traffic and road construction, definitely correct that that road was just torn up in 2020 through that state grant to run water down to the neighborhood. And at that time, it was gravel. Everyone who was down there knew it was gravel for the whole summer. That's not what we're planning for, because there is obviously a brand new road there today. And what we really have to do is widen the road to the east is what we're looking at. So the intent is actually to keep traffic on the current roadway pavement for really most of that construction phase. There's obviously some work to put in the curb and gutter, things like that, run some storm sewer. But we'll actually kind of widen it to the east and make it wider and then pave it and then do kind of a finished wear course when we're done. So we're really hoping to keep traffic on pavement as much as possible through that entire construction period of Ideal Avenue. Not that there won't be impacts. I mean, there's always impacts from construction, but we're really able to use that new pavement that was just put in place. And it was paid for by the state grant. It was not paid for by the city in terms of, having to rework on that road 3 years later. But that's our plan for Ideal Avenue. We'll work closely with the contractor on that. In terms of construction access, really NorthPoint, at least in talking to them, their intent is to really, it comes off 100th Street, which is why they want to get 100th Street done in 2022. They're not going to be allowed to park construction traffic, things like that on the roadways. They'll have to, leave the roadway and have parking on site, which is why we wanted to get 100th done. So it's done and in place really before they have tenants following that construction season. And then in terms of the roundabout, right, getting a big picture, and the question about the traffic study. So there was a very detailed, extensive traffic study with the master site plan, looking at everything. And if something was brought back that was inconsistent, we'd have to relook at that. This is 100% consistent with that site plan. The city still has that, very detailed traffic study, which is consistent with our traffic study that was done in the AUAR. So that was looked at in very great detail through the master site planning and approval process last November and December. For the roundabouts, right, there's no question that at shift change, right, you can wait longer. I worked down at Public Works, we come right out onto that roundabout. But in terms of how you look at a roundabout and how MnDOT looks at roundabouts and how we study them, you look at that peak hour, right? There's certainly going to be times when you have to wait. That's anywhere, right? Go to any type of interchange, right? Highway interchange at peak times, you're going to have to wait. But it's how long are you waiting? And right now, we're anticipating operating at a level of service C from an A through F scale when this is fully built out. So think of it as like a glass half full for that peak hour. I know a lot of details, but that's really what we have to look at. And that was looked at in great detail with that AOAR as well that the city did. But we are really keen on getting that second access point straight out to the Innovation Road interchange. Right now, you've got the curve, Miller Road goes way down to 3M. It's very out of the way. No one really uses that. The county has started their preliminary design for that roadway. They have it in their capital improvement plan. We have it in our capital improvement plan. In the next 5 years. So as you look at this development slowly building out over the next several years, our intent is to get that roadway built with a bridge over the railroad tracks to have another second direct route out to Highway 61. So even though the plan and the traffic study says it works without it, we still think it's important because it's a developing area, and that's something we'll be working for very thoroughly in the next few years.
All right. Thank you. And Ryan, while you're up there, I'm just going to ask, since it was brought up, obviously, I don't think the renewal expansion was even thought of when we did that traffic study as part of the master plan. But even with adding the number of trucks we're expecting out of renewal as part of that expansion we just approved, that's not something the city's concerned about.
Correct, that's not a concern. With their traffic study, they do look at background traffic growth. They do anticipate other growth happening. And with our AUAR, which looked globally at everything, that did account for full build out of this area. Including residential development and everything else. So those roads that we're sizing on Hunter Street and Ideal Avenue, those are built for really the full build out of the area.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for staff?
I have a question.
Commissioner Fisher.
So looking forward, the proposed Hadley Avenue that will eventually go in, do you guys know about when that will happen? So as this builds out to the east, having that access to avoid when things get cracking on the east side?
Yeah, so
For
that,
lack of better-
it's a good
whatever.
question, Commissioner and Mr. Chair. So that roadway and that realignment really would be tied to residential development in that area. And there's actually a neighborhood meeting on Thursday night related to those potential residential developments. So you would, if those were to move ahead, you would actually see that happen in the next 2 years as well. So to get that second access out of this area would obviously be a good thing for not just the developments, but for all the residents down there. But it is tied to those residential developments. They really need it for, they have to have a second access point. We would not allow residential development to happen without a second access point to that southern area.
Sure, and is that the same for the south portion after the roundabout? That will be kind of
Yep.
dictated by future development?
That's correct,
at that
yep.
time? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Knable.
So 100th Street and Jamaica, are there going to be any traffic signal changes going on there during this?
Yep, so that was looked at with the traffic study, and those, MnDOT watches pretty carefully, and they watch us, so we can't put in a signal till it meets what they call warrants. It's just tripping certain conditions. Right now, the always stop that was put in is going to work for that area, and we will continue to watch that signal every year. But what we're doing with this project is we're building the turn lanes, and we're putting in the bases and the conduits, we're putting everything in. So all we have to do is just purchase the signal poles and put them in place. Like 95th and Jamaica, I think everyone knew that was a pretty extensive project to make that work for a signal. This one will be ready to go. So as soon as we trip those warrants, whether it's in 2025 or 2026, whatever it might be, we can put those signals in very quickly and very easily.
All right, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
Any further discussion from the commission? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion.
I would motion to approve the site plan 2022-022, subject to all conditions in the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Rasmussen. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Commissioner Fisher. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 7-0. All right, we'll move on to item 6.5, which is comprehensive plan amendment, case CP 2022-013, with Mike Marosla presenting.
Oh. Sorry about that. Just jumping the gun, I was moving ahead to the next item, so I apologize. Good evening again, Chair and Commissioners. There we go. All right, I apologize. So my item tonight is the 2040 Comprehensive Plan Amendment. We've been working on this document, updated for a number of months now. I actually started, right when I started here, kind of started looking at it last March, kicking it around. A little background, the 2040 Comprehensive Plan is a major planning document. The Planning Commission, you guys use it regularly, so does the City Council for guiding the city in all physical development within the community. The city's comprehensive plan is the strategic planning efforts for many of the years for the city was to put the community for growth, position the community for growth. And those efforts were solidified in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, which was a very big on-taking. It was an update, it was not a total rewrite. So in 2015, the city started, got notification from the Met Council that system statements kind of directed the city what they needed to do as part of the Upper Comprehensive Plan update. And then the city started a steering committee in 2016. They also hired Stantec to be a consultant. Stantec did assist us on this update as well tonight, as there is some technical engineering that has to take place as part of the amendment. I'm not going to go through all the major things on here, milestones. Big talking points were the comprehensive plan was submitted to the Met Council in January of 2019. Took a little while to get approved by the Met Council. Got approved in August of 2020. Mainly because there was some amendments that needed to be done to the sanitary sewer section of the code. A lot of the communities in the metropolitan areas had to do a lot of updating to their plans to meet the standards of the wastewater section of the comprehensive plan requirements. And so we were one of them that had to work on that for a while. But since it's been approved since 2020, the city has seen significant growth, specifically residential. So I want to talk about that tonight and why we're going to update. Why we're proposing this update in front of us tonight. So a lot of the work done on the comprehensive plan started the 2017-2018 window here. During that time, that was when a lot of the writing was done. The map was made for the land use plan, all the chapters were identified, everything is getting prepared to submit to the Met Council in early 2019. If you look at this table here on the left, you can see what happened. We submitted in 2019, we had normal growth, and all of a sudden 2020, we said 741 new units were platted that year. That is significant, and the comprehensive plan did not anticipate that kind of development to happen in that kind of time span. And then in 2021, we had additional 420, and this year of submittal projects that we're going to review one after this, and other projects coming up, we're anticipating about another 619 units just the beginning of this year. So the comprehensive plan did not anticipate this kind of growth. In addition to the phasing plan needed to be updated as we're technically all the growth was not anticipated, so we had to update the phasing plan. So a little background here is our current, this is a zoning map, and I apologize, there is a slide missing, but right now the problem is all the development on the north side of the community, all these areas have been developed now. And so what's happening is we only have 2 vacant parcels remaining on the north side of the community. We have the Kemp property here, Waltersdorf right here, this property at the intersection of Jamaica and Military, we have an application for. Earlier this year, the Planning Commission approved a subdivision on the McCaddy piece, and then we have this last remaining vacant piece right here on the Phyllis McCaddy parcel. That's the only remaining parcels on the north side of the community. On the south side of the community, we will see development on an application later for Mississippi Landing. And also, as Ryan indicated, we do have some potential other development in this general area of the community. And so what's happening here is we get to the next slide, we're noticing that our phasing is getting full. We're completing all the proposed development sooner than expected. I think it's worth noting in the 2040 comprehensive plan originally, we'll see this on a future slide here. We were only supposed to have 300 and some units by 2020. We had 1,200. So it's significant growth. And that's due to the hard work that the city did on the comprehensive plan process, positioning the city for growth. And so as an outcome of that, we need to take another step back and take a look at where are we going to grow next. So as all the development has occurred in the northern part of the section of the city, as identified in this general area, and down the southern part, we are looking to move the phasing plan to accommodate the future growth as utilities have been stubbed and studies have been done to know that these areas are serviceable. So we're proposing as part of this amendment to update the staging plan within the 2040 comprehensive plan to move phase 3 here to phase 1. This is east of Keats, just north of City Hall here. All this area up here is 3M land, so we're gonna keep that in 3. 3M is not more likely not gonna sell that land or do any kind of development in that general area. So we're keeping that in phase 3. Phase 1 is all part of the East Ravine master plan. The master plan effort did take place a number of years ago. So this has been planned as well. There's also been planning done in this other phase 1 area that we're gonna be adding right here. Currently in phase 2. We're gonna update this to phase 1. Master plan has been done in the effort, and the master plan has been done in the area, especially the shops and Cottage Grove down here. But we're also seeing some potential interest in developing properties of land in this general area as well, and up here from developers as we'll see. Then the last part we're proposing to do is some minor amendments to the side here. As the outcome of the Mississippi Dunes master planning effort, we're proposing to add in the Mississippi Landing project in Mississippi Dunes area as it is serviceable. In addition, we are proposing to add another little section up here that is serviceable by St. Paul Park. We worked with St. Paul Park in the comment letter that you, as part of your, included in your packet is a comment letter from St. Paul Park, just notifying that there's some additional engineering that needed to take place in order for that piece to be serviced by them, but there is capacity in their system for that area to be serviced. And our city engineer is here available for any questions you might have on that. So the big picture is we're opening up phases that were previously pushed out into the future as development's happening sooner and utilities are provided. So utilities are stubbed, we'll talk about here in a minute, to service this area along Keats. There's utilities that are able to service this area down here and in this general area here. So we have also worked very closely with the Metropolitan Council on this. This is not just a small update, this is a bigger update. When you change this kind of phasing stuff, you have to do amendments to other chapters within the comprehensive plan. So we had to update our forecast amendment. We'll talk about that quickly here. We also had to update our MUSA, which is our Metropolitan Urban Service Area, which we talked about a little bit. That just shows that the area within the MUSA is serviceable by utilities. And then we had to update our density and housing projections as we're opening up new areas. We have to make sure they're consistent with the previous plan and Met Council requirements. And then we had to make sure all this new development is able to be served and there's capacity within the sewer system and water supplies to service said development. So on the bottom here is the forecast amendment. What we've seen is the growth has happened sooner than anticipated. So in 2040, we're anticipated to have 47,000, a population of 47,000 residents, 17,300 households, and 9,000 employment, roughly 9,000. However, that was being updated as part of this comprehensive plan to 54,700 and 19,000 households. And this is all done using acreage and doing some projections in the future. None of this is known that we'll actually hit that number by then. It all depends on the market and, you know, the market saturation and the economy. So this is just using general overall acreages and calculations to figure this out. This is probably on the high end. I'm not gonna lie. So not every acre is developable. So the next part we had to do a MUSA amendment, MUSA boundary, areas that are serviceable by utilities. We just went over that a little bit. The area we're adding all this area that's banded here originally is serviceable in this general area here, which is 3, 2, and 3. We are now adding the Mississippi Landing area and the properties around it, because after the Mississippi Landing goes in, they would be serviceable. In addition to the St. Paul Park area here we talked about. Then, also we are gonna be amending additional areas in number 2 here can be serviceable by development in this general area and an extension of utilities. So we are looking big picture on that. Next is updating density and housing projections. Yes, we are having an increased amount of product being built or proposed. However, the big takeaway from these 2 tables, the existing one here, shows that our current growth, this is the table I actually talked about where we really exceeded the proposal. Our low density was only 280 units and our medium density was 100. We had 1,200 units, so we greatly exceeded that in that little time frame. However, we're anticipating additional growth in the 2021 to 2030 timeline as shown right here. However, the one thing that is consistent is the net units residential, this number here, 4.3, 4.3. So yes, there's more growth, but it's consistent with the old plan. So there's nothing really changing. There's more growth that's occurring faster, but the overall density is not changing throughout the community. And the same thing here, 2031 to 2040, net density stays the same. So the numbers are going up, but the overall density throughout the community is staying the same. Then, this part here, we talked about, you gotta make sure that these new developments are serviceable. So we hired Stan Tech to do a detailed analysis. We worked with the Metropolitan Council to make sure that all this new development is serviceable. And so, just showing this area here, as we talked about the Mississippi Dunes area and the potential development NorthPoint, it is serviceable by extension of this line here. And then on the east of Keats, we do have sanitary sewer stubs and water stubs able to service that area already. More than likely, the development cycle in this area would be from north to south along Keats, moving south to 70th and 70th South as the utilities are provided in this general area. Again, if you have any questions about the updated sewer projections or water supply, our city engineer, Ryan Burfine's here to address those questions. We are proposing one minor mapping amendment as part of this update. As the next item we're talking about, the city council did approve a master plan earlier or late 2021 for the Mississippi Dunes, former Mississippi Dunes Golf Course. So that area was previously guided as transitional planning. So additional study had to be done. As I said, the significant study went into it. A master plan was created, a master plan was approved. So this proposed amendment does include this area, re-guiding this area to parkland adjacent to the river, low density, and then some medium density, consistent with the proposed or the approved master plan. And then, as part of any kind of comprehensive plan update, you need to work with your adjacent communities and impacted governmental agencies. There's the list of the 21 agencies I had to notify of this. And we did get a response from all the green highlighted ones. We did receive no comments or comments of support from. We did receive some comments from the city of Afton, St. Paul Park, and the DNR. We are working through those comments. They were included in your packets. The Afton ones just wanted to know more about the timing of growth towards the area. St. Paul Park wanted to discuss additional engineering that may need to be done to do inter-community connections. And the DNR had some mapping of questions as well, or recommendations. So we're working through those as well. With that said, a recommendation's on the screen. Next steps would, if the planning commission recommends approval, city council will hear this in March, and then we would formally submit to the Metropolitan Council for review. That process probably takes 60 to 120 days, depending on the scope, the large scope of this update. But like I said previously, we have been working with them throughout the process because they have a number of policies and things that we have to meet and ensure that we follow their standards through this update. And I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? All right, thanks, Mike. At this time, I'll open the public comment on this application. Again, you have 3 minutes if anyone would like to speak for or against this application.
Hello, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Good to be with you this evening. My name is Lisa Mueller. My address is N5001 810th Street in Ellsworth, Wisconsin. I've had the opportunity to attend, I think, just about every Planning Commission, Park and Rec Commission, and City Council meeting since this former Mississippi Dunes Golf Course and proposed Mississippi Landing Development Project have been on the table. I will just say quickly, I guess I'm not even sure where to start. If somebody could keep me honest on the time, that would be great. I wish I had more than 3 minutes. I will say just something that the planner just mentioned kind of gave me pause, and that this is a quote, "After Mississippi Landing goes in," as though it's a foregone conclusion. And that's the part that has really disturbed me throughout this process. Throughout the process, I'll just say that I've been most impressed by the well-informed and passionate appeals from local citizens and neighbors to the Dunes property. I was equally impressed with the agencies, organizations, and individuals who took the time to review the lengthy environmental assessment worksheet and to submit their comments in writing. I submitted comments also, and I know Emily and I have exchanged messages this week. For some reason, my comments were not received by the city. They were received by Pulte Builders, and I received a thank you from Pulte the following day after the comment period closed. So I would like to provide my comments on the EAW to you all tonight, or in whatever fashion you deem most appropriate, if electronic or a printed copy. My background is as an ecologist. I've worked for close to 30 years in the greater Twin Cities metro area and in greater Minnesota and the eastern Dakotas to protect land. I've done a lot of work buying land on behalf of the Scientific and Natural Areas Program.
Sorry, if I can just interrupt you, and I'm sorry if you're getting to it. So this application is just for the comprehensive plan amendment. We are going to have the Mississippi Landing
Yes.
application next,
Yep.
where we're going to talk about the EAW process that City Council completed. So I didn't know if you wanted to save it for when we actually talk about that, or if you have any comments about the.
I'm getting there, and I may,
Sure.
and I'll try to be brief.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I was surprised, given the length and the depth and breadth of comments that were made on the EAW, I was very surprised and disappointed to see it shuffled off to the consent agenda at the February 2nd City Council meeting. Several of us that are here tonight spoke at that meeting, and we asked, with a high degree of earnestness, that it be moved to a regular agenda so there'd be an opportunity for comment, that those requests were ignored. I think the clear feeling, and as I mentioned the quote earlier, that the assumption is that the Dunes project is a done deal. This all is happening despite the fact that the property borders a scientific and natural area, has soils that are wind-blown sands and are underlain with groundwater that is contaminated with PFAS, forever chemicals, is a sacred site to Native Americans, provides suitable habitat for the federally endangered rusty patched bumblebee and several other endangered and threatened species, falls within the National Park Service MNRA boundary, is protected by the newly adopted MERCA ordinance, and is the best and last remaining chance for the city and its partners to protect open space and parkland that borders and provides access to the Mississippi River. My sense is that the city thinks it has successfully pulled the wool over the eyes of its constituents, but they are wrong about that. I am here tonight to remind the commission of its charge and to articulate what is and is not possible at this juncture. Several steps are required for the Metropolitan Council's review of a comp plan or an amendment to a comp plan under the Metropolitan Land Planning Act. The Planning Commission is taking one of those steps tonight, approving the proposed comp plan amendment. Presumably, you'll approve it. Then the City Council must also approve the proposed amendment and authorize its submittal to the Metropolitan Council for review. The city then has to notify adjacent communities, and it sounds as though you've already done that, so I'll skip over that part. And so that's a 60-day comment period by affected or adjacent communities. I'm almost done.
Yep, go ahead and finish. I think I took some of your time. So.
Okay, thank you. When a proposed amendment is finally submitted to the Metropolitan Council, they have 15 days to decide if the application for approval of the proposed amendment is complete. If so, the council can take 60 days to review the conformance. So there are the 3 Cs: conformance, with its metropolitan system plans, consistency with its non-metropolitan system plans, and compatibility with comp plans of adjacent communities. It's important to remember that the amendments is not final until it is approved and returned by the Metropolitan Council and the City Council adopts it with any conditions or, any conditions or changes recommended by the Met Council. Then and only then can the city start taking action to implement the amendment, such as changing land use regulations. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you.
And thank you for your volunteer service.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against the comprehensive plan amendment? Go ahead and approach. Sounds great. Go ahead and state your name and address, please.
My name is Sharon O'Boyle, and I reside at 9300 Great Cloud Trail South, Great Cloud Island Township. For historical purposes, I'll make it quick. My grandma O'Boyle owned Mississippi Dunes prior to it becoming a golf course. One thing that I noticed, I'm against there being any amendment that includes an update to the future land use map regarding Mississippi Dunes. And from what the gentleman stated was that there was supposed to be 300 units put in this time period that you were talking about. Instead, the city had approved 1,200 units. That seems like you overdid it. And that there have been articles in the newspaper about Washington County becoming an urban sprawl. And that concerns me, that it changes the whole flavor of what Cottage Grove, St. Paul Park, Great Cloud are all about. And with having already put in 1,200 units, that to me makes it even more necessary to keep our open spaces, which is Mississippi Dunes, and then to go through the steps. But right now it seems premature to add an amendment regarding Mississippi Dunes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I'll come back up when.
Hello. Thank you very much. Hello. Bonnie Matter, 6649 in Skip Avenue South. And I would like to just make some comments on the proposed amendment for the 2040 comprehensive plan. It's very difficult to talk through these items because I really don't know. I tried to write down, well, what page was it on? But I'm going, scrolling through. They're not the easiest documents to read. On page 3, there's a reference to, what does it say? Talks about, it says, the proposed amendment re-guides the former Mississippi Dunes Golf Course parcels from transitional planning area to low density and medium density residential and is constant with the master plan efforts. I don't know what that means. So if someone could, on page 4, the image used does not make sense and it's not representative of the Mississippi Dunes area. And I don't think that there's a legend, there's not street names, it's really hard to understand what I'm looking at. The notice of public comment. There was a notice, I guess, put in the Pioneer Press on February 16th. I'm sorry, I don't get the Pioneer Press, and I also don't read those little bitty notices. So the first I heard about this was I saw it in the Cottage Grove Journal, so shout out to them. Next steps. I see that we that next this will go to the Met Council for approval, and it will take up to 120 days for approval, for review and approval. Number 8, there was a statement about wastewater and also the water supply. And I'm thinking that that's probably also part of the AUR, the Business Park AUAR, that's sitting out right now on the Cottage Grove website for updating. But it looks like there's some pretty good changes there. Also, the St. Paul Parks letter talks about 3 homes per acre, but the chart that was in there talked about 5 homes per acre. There's on page 30, there's a figure 210 future land use map that shows the Mississippi Dunes property as transitional. But then on page 31, there's a revised one. And not only that, it shows the DNR SNA surrounded by low and medium residential housing. And I mean on the west side, the north side, and the east side. That's new. Never heard about that before. I don't know enough about the MUSA to comment on it. The links in the document, the Minnesota DNR did respond regarding the SNA, but I couldn't make them clickable, so I don't know what they said. And I've got a business park expansion area, the staging area. Oh, it goes on and on. Page 37, under surface water.
Ms. Mather, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, really appreciate it.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Mike Weekman. I reside at 10659 Gray Cloud Trail South. I just had 3 questions on really a bar chart that was presented and driving a lot of the last presentation. I'm not sure if it's possible to bring that chart back up here. Perfect, thank you. So just a few questions on this one in particular. So this is plat approvals. I guess a question to whoever the appropriate parties would be. Our occupancies, our forecasted occupancies following these approvals as well. We're seeing, if you look at the chart here, and obviously one could speculate it's a pandemic spike in 2020, probably tapering down in 2021. I mean, another question on this topic, how has that factored into this planning and the discussions? I mean, are these numbers affected by pandemic spikes? We're relatively consistent in the years leading up to it, and how much is that really affecting this going forward? Has that been taken into account? And if so, if we are really seeing a kind of an exodus out of the metropolitan area and into the suburbs, as we're maybe seeing here in this graph, is a 22-person steering committee from 2016 really valid at this point? Do you want to reconsider maybe updating that or taking into account the people like myself? I moved here in 2020 from the city, and at this point I haven't had any input on any of that because, quite frankly, it was done before I got here. I'm sure there are others like me. There's one sitting right here, Mr. Grams. So just out there for consideration, maybe we want to think about the new members of the community and how their input might factor into this 2040 plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. My name is Sarah Wers, 8642 Grosse Pointe Avenue South. I had a comment also about this. Why were so many approved if that pace was not in line with the comp plan? If the comp plan guides everything that you do, that the city does, then shouldn't there be limits placed and the ability to say no if the pace is not in line with that until an amendment and study is made, study and then amendment? When there is a rapid increase in housing in one area, there are many things to consider regarding how the community is affected. Not all growth at this pace is good. Has the city considered the impact on the school district? 2 high schools are already over capacity. 3 other schools will be within 2 years, and within 10 years, 10 additional schools will be over capacity. This is directly related to the increase in housing in the community. And I will say, it's not just Cottage Grove. I mean, it's every community that District 833 serves. To manage this, the district has no choice but to remodel, add on, and build more schools. And this costs money. So they plan to seek a bond referendum this year for that, related to this spike in housing. The bond referendum is $432 to $582 million, depending on which plan they go with. They have 2 that they're choosing from now. So local property owners would see an increase in their taxes to pay for this, approximately $264 to $408 a year for an average $300,000 home. All these homes are more than that, going to cost people more. So is the city partnering with the district in long-term planning so that they're able to keep pace with this growth? What about other agencies and infrastructure that's impacted by this growth? We need to pause and consider more than the wallets of property owners and mass market developers. I also want to make sure that everyone is aware of the plan proposed for the 103rd Street Bridge. I believe this kind of falls in line with that. You know, we're seeing growth, so we're seeing, oh, maybe we should look at this bridge that's been in rough shape. Mayor Bailey now says it's unsafe and needs to be replaced. A few months ago, it was fine when, you know, I was questioning if we had a park there and I needed an ambulance for my child, would they be able to get there quickly? And they said, oh, it's fine. Now it's unsafe and needs to be replaced. It'll be a complicated project with the angle, and the railroad has to keep running during that process. It's $8.5 million to do that. And who pays for that? He's asked our representatives at the state to ask for funding. There's no plan for that funding. It's a hope. They don't promise that. So if that's not paid for, then who pays? And will the community be stuck with Dead Man's Bridge as it is if it's not paid for? So.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'll be very brief. My name is Jennifer Nedry. I reside at 7764 Jasmine Avenue South. I just want to take my hat off to all of the work that everyone has been doing, the staff, the residents, the commissioners. I appreciate it so much. But what I appreciate also is the fact that we're all invested in this community. There's friction because we care. The one thing that I haven't heard us caring about this evening, though, beyond people, traffic, light, barriers, is the open space that is the SNA and the Mississippi Dunes. So I just want to highlight that as something that I care about. I believe that there's a lot of care in the community, although there's only a small contingent of us that show up meeting after meeting to talk about this. You guys take our quality of life regularly, and you take it very seriously, but I just feel the need to speak out for the open space. I know there'll be talk about the city parks. I take advantage of them. I have Kingston Park in my backyard. I'm thankful for that, but with the report on climate change tonight, open space is critical to the survival of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comment on the comprehensive plan amendment application?
Hi, my name is Sean Wolf. I reside at 10744 Gray Cloud Island Drive, and I would like to say hello. And the area of Gray Cloud Island is pretty quiet at night. It's a nice area to enjoy, a nice fire, you know, some family time. It's peaceful, and to add some type of development that's coming in like this would severely impact the quality of life at just any given time. And I pay to like live there. I'd like keeping that privacy, and I feel like it's kind of disregarded with this type of invasion of people and an inundation of people. And I plan on speaking on the next bit of this too, but obviously it just seems like when will it stop? Are you gonna add, like, what, is a McDonald's coming in next, or a gas station? This is like, there's only two ways in and out of this whole area, and I just feel like there's a disregard of the impact of this type of process. So I just like you guys to take that into consideration. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else on this application?
I'm Tom Nierengarten, 10500 Gray Cloud Trail South of Cottage Grove. I guess I've got some concerns looking at the map. It's that was sent to me in the mail. It's a little bit hard to connect all the dots here. But it looks like our neighborhood is about to change fairly soon from the quiet rural area that it is now to something different. I think we experienced a project called the Pavement Improvement Plan resulted in repaving of our road in front of us, which created an assessment. And I think that what seems to be happening now is the possibility of sewers being put in, heavy limestone formations that are pretty much exist in the ground right now. I think that the cost to deal with that must be fairly significant. And who's going to pay for that, I'm not sure. I mean, that hasn't really been discussed. But we've been asked to invest in a brand-new road several years ago, right around the time that the Dunes Golf Course was being discontinued. And at the time, I guess the thinking was that the road would be probably be useful for another 15, 20 years. That's what we'd really expect. But not being in construction, I'm not familiar what would be required to get the sewers in across to the western side of Gray Cloud Trail. But to do the heavy rock formations, I have to believe would be a significant expense and probably an unnecessary one, because we're getting along pretty well with what we have right now. And we weren't expecting to really have to deal with that until at least 2040. And who knows where we're even going to be here at that time. But I guess I do have some concerns that the roads that are still not even being paid for, haven't been paid for, the assessments for that have not been paid for yet, might have to be torn up and replaced with another road to accommodate the construction of the sewers. So I think there's a few more questions to be considered here before it goes through.
All right, thank you. Anyone else like to be heard on this application? All right, with that, I'll close public hearing. Staff want to follow up on a couple things we heard?
Yes, Chair and Commission, and thank you for all the participants in the public hearing. A couple things. When the 2040 comprehensive plan was adopted, get this pen here and clean this up real quick. One thing is the city, once we have a comprehensive plan adopted and then the land use plan adopted, we cannot deny an application if they meet the comprehensive plan and zoning requirements. We cannot say no to that application. We must send that application through the Planning Commission and City Council for review, a formal review process. So all the development that occurred in this general area did go through that formal process, as it was consistent with the pre-programming on the land use plan. So that is why those units got approved. We did see that, and that's a great question. I think that's what a lot of, second great question is this influx here related to the pandemic? And only time can tell to that. Part of it could be a lot of relation to the pandemic and housing and all the market requirements to that. Also though, we're also seeing that growth continue into this year. Future market studies will show us how that plays out in the next couple of years. And so this year we're looking for an increase as well. However, depending on the market, that it could always change. And we're in the year 2022 now, and little than 3 years, the Metropolitan Council is going to be sending out system statements to update our 2050 plan. So there's going to be an opportunity for the citizens to be involved again very soon here. The Metropolitan Council is already starting to do their planning for the 2050 plans. And so we'll start seeing those ramping up here in the coming years as the 2050s, when they start the system statements. 26 is when the cities pretty much kick off the review and then be adopted by 2029 into 2030. Another quick comment, I think Ryan has some follow-up too probably. The Pioneer Press is the official public hearing notice for the city. We also use our website. Prior to the Pioneer Press, it was the Journal, I believe.
Bulletin.
Bulletin, thank you. So that's what we use. Unfortunately, there's not a better way to get these mass producing out. There's 12,000 residents or households in the community. That's the easiest way to do it is via the newspaper and the website. We apologize on that. If there's a better way, we would certainly do it. Again, though, the growth has occurred. Now it's trying to work with what we have. The city's infrastructure is in place to accommodate the growth and has been programmed for future growth as well, especially in the upper ravine area, as pointed out previously. With that said, I'll turn it over to our city engineer if he has any additional comments to add.
And Mike,
Unless the commission has some,
Before we
sorry.
do that, Commissioner Britton.
Yeah, just a comment on that, and some clarification. The comprehensive plan guides our big picture, long-term goals for the community. Its intent in part is to prevent urban sprawl, so that we're not hopping to areas of the community that can't be serviced by the MUSA or city services. And as you mentioned, the areas that we had already zoned out in the comprehensive plan for activity filled up. And if just clarifying this for me, that this comprehensive plan update, which appears to me to be consistent with the direction of our previous comprehensive plans, is now to allow us to again prevent urban sprawl by opening up these new areas, which we have to open up, but to prevent urban sprawl or discontinuous expansion of services, which is more economical, and it allows the developers to be the ones paying for this infrastructure improvement. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner Britton. Very well said.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, some of the street and utility questions that I can help provide clarification on. There was a question about St. Paul Park, and they had a reference to 3 units an acre, and different parts of the plan had different numbers. That was specific to that 13 acres that they could service up off 85th Street. So just for that specific piece of land, they indicated they could serve 3 units an acre. There was no reference to any other densities at any other point in the community. When we look at the cost, the question came up about the cost, which is more related to Mississippi Landing. That's come up before. But anything in the development, and we can talk about that more in the next item, is all paid for by the developer. It is not paid for by those residents around it. There would be no assessments. There was an assessment project in 2015 to reconstruct Gray Cloud Trail. There will be that portion up by 103rd Street that would have to be realigned following the county plan. That would be fully paid for by the developer, and then there would be a brand new road. Right now it's a 7-year-old road. It's a brand new road. You're restarting that time clock for a reconstruct at no cost to any of the residents in the area. And in regards to the bridge, there was a traffic study done for the Mississippi Landing project, and it's effectively a 2-way always stop. That's what it is right now. And from a traffic standpoint, that does work for that development. There will be different safety measures, enhancements, flashing stop signs, flashing bridge height signs, and more advanced warning signs. Just with, if a development was approved, there'd be new traffic to the area, but that 2-way stop does work. What we want to do is we don't want to miss an opportunity to get funding to widen that bridge. It's not necessary right now for this development, but if we can get that funding, we're going to go for it. We're not just going to sit by and let that opportunity go away. It is a complicated process to replace a railroad. It'd be a close coordination with the city, the county, and the railroad, and largely it's done with that railroad track in operation. And there's basically a temporary bridge built, and you build a new bridge and then switch them back. So there's really no impact to the roadway underneath largely while that's happening. If funding and grant funding could be pursued. That's separate, and that's not part of the development application.
right. Any questions for Ryan? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from commission?
I want to make a comment.
Commissioner Fisher?
There were a couple things said that I just wanted to comment on. Somebody had quoted, I think Mike, about feeling like all of this is a foregone conclusion, and that the city is pulling wool over eyes. I'm speaking for this commission and other people I know. We spend a lot of time going over these things, listening to considerations, listening to people speak their opinions, and that matters to us. It certainly matters to me, and I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I know it matters to everybody. And the woman who said that everybody cares, that's true. That's true. I sit up here because I care about our community. But also, another thing that was said was, when you have a willing buyer and a willing seller, and it meets the plan, legally, the city can't deny it just because we want to hold back or we feel like things are going too quickly. That's illegal. So I just wanted to say that this city in particular puts in a ton of planning and a ton of work into making sure that legally we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And we're passionate about what we do. So I'm sorry that that person feels like the wool's being pulled over their eyes, because I don't know anybody in this situation that is intending to do any of that. So just wanted to say that.
Mike?
I just want to add one more question that I did not address, but we do work very closely with the school district. Every kind of comprehensive plan amendment, any kind of plat that comes in, we submit and coordinate with the school district, because that's the number one goal, is to make sure we have a very open, clear communication with all impacted parties. If it's a DNR, if it's MnDOT, if it's any agency, even the watershed district, we notify everyone when we get an application in, because everyone has a right to review that and provide comment. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that we do work very closely with the school district. We have staff meetings on Wednesday night, as a matter of fact. So we want to make sure that, and they are aware of this as well. We did meet with them and discuss this proposed amendment. Just want to address that comment as well. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments from commission?
I just kind of want to talk about, new community members. There is always opportunity here to volunteer. Planning Commission, you can run for city council this year. There are other volunteer boards that the city has. CGA, another way to get out there and just be part of the community. I mean, I've been here for 1991, I believe. I moved here to Cottage Grove, and I've loved living here, and it's great to hear the passion that you guys have for these developments. And I can tell you, back in, when I moved here, we were upset about Sandy Hills expanding, their stuff, and what was that going to do to the open land up there, and overcapacity of the schools. I've had 5 kids go through Park High School, currently have a junior. I hear all your concerns and comments, and we do take it very seriously when we think about this. But there are laws, that we have. So I just want to make sure I say appreciate everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you.
Any additional comment? I'll just make a couple comments. I think there was a comment about the future land use map that was included in the staff report, and I don't think it was included in the slideshow presentation, but then there was a comment about the fact that it looks like other things have been added or changed other than the proposed amendment that we're dealing with here. And looking back and forth at the land use map that was already submitted and approved by Met Council and the City Council, the whole east side of the SNA was already going to be low-density residential. In fact, there's neighborhoods down there already. And so the only change between those two maps that I can see is the change that we're talking about tonight, which deals with the Mississippi Landing master plan, which was already approved by us and then by City Council. And so this land use map amendment would be just to make sure we're consistent with the master plan that the city has already said this is how we want to go forward with. And so with that in mind, I am supportive of the comprehensive plan amendment. If there are no other comments, I'd be looking for a motion.
I move to approve the amendment to the 2040 comprehensive plan.
I have a motion by Commissioner Britton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Knable. Any other comment on the motion? Otherwise, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. All right, we'll move on to item number 6.6, Mississippi Landing, cases ZA 2022-009, PP 2022-010, and SP 2022-011, with Emily Schmitz presenting. But before we get there, I'm going to recognize Councilmember Thiede for a second.
Just need to turn my microphone on here. Yeah, I think some of the planning commission commented on this too, but we really look for the planning commission to really focus on whether these changes and so forth are meeting our ordinances and our code, and that just helps the council out immensely. And I know, and we love, like I said, we love passion, we love input, but on some of these things for the planning commission, you really kind of need to focus on saying, well, this is what you're looking to change, and this is what your ordinances and code say that say that, it doesn't fit, right? So you really want to kind of save, like I say, love your passion and your input, but you should probably save that for the council, because the council's the one that really makes the final decision. So.
We've been saying it to the council.
Well, I know, and the council, I guarantee you, the council has been listening. We get input from a lot of people. I mean, I've had people come up to me, and this is going a little long, but I've had people come up to me and say, this is fantastic, we're gonna like having that park, we're gonna like having access, so we take it in from everybody. But for this, I would appreciate it if you kind of focused on really kind of saying, well, here are the verifiable facts, and here's how it's not meeting code or it's not meeting the ordinances and things like that. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Ritz.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'll bring up the rear. I will say last but certainly not the least, clearly, is the applications before you for Mississippi Landing, preliminary plat zoning amendment, and site plan review.
Excuse me, my understanding is that we can't even discuss this until after the Metropolitan Council.
Ma'am, I'm going to have you sit down. Thank you. Public comment's not open yet. Thank you.
The former Mississippi Dunes Golf Course is located just adjacent to the Mississippi River, and as we've heard, adjacent to the SNA and just south of the most recently approved Settlers Bluff development to the north. We'll go back just a couple of steps in how we've ended up here today reviewing the applications that we are. I'll step back to 2030, sometime around 2011. The golf course was guided in the 2030 comprehensive plan as golf course in an effort to differentiate the golf course from park area, with the understanding that there was the potential the golf course could be sold and potential redevelopment opportunities could be there. In 2040 or sometime around 2017, as discussions happened for the 2040 comprehensive plan amendment, there was an understanding that that the golf course had closed, and there was the potential or ideas floating around for different redevelopment opportunities. So the city took that as an opportunity to guide as the transition planning area, which requires some additional planning efforts prior to any potential redevelopment of the site. We wanted to take that one additional step before we heard any potential applications at that time. So one of those additional planning efforts is in fact a master plan. As many of you might recall, we started that master planning process in early 2021. We hired ISG as a consultant, and we worked through a lot of months of community engagement in front of City Council, in front of the Planning Commission. The master plan before you on the screen outlines the approved with a medium density, creating a little bit of a buffer from the train tracks, and of course, addressing the strategic goals of the City Council and the city for providing a variety of housing types within the community. The majority, of course, master planned as single family, and then a large portion of the site, as you may recall, as park area, providing that public access, again, another strategic goal of the City Council and the city, public access to the Mississippi River. The second part to that master planning process was, of course, the park plan. A lot of detail, again, into that process. Parks, trails, open space, providing both passive and active, providing access to the Mississippi River for all abilities. That master plan was approved just at the end of 2021. Which is when we started to see the Mississippi Dunes EAW, which was the next step in the process, which was completed by Pulte Homes. It was published in the EQB Monitor for public comment for 30 days, and then the notice of decision was reviewed and heard at the City Council on March 2nd. That was a negative declaration, no need for an additional EIS or environmental review as a part of that process. But I do want to make note that the developer is proposing to do an additional habitat assessment on the site by hiring licensed ecologists to do that review and identify any required mitigation efforts that are going to need to be taken as a part of potential development of the site. So that's how we got to where we are this evening. Now we'll dig into the actual applications that are before you. The first is the preliminary plat. This is a unique proposal and a unique development where we have coordination between Pulte Homes and Lifestyle Communities. So Pulte is proposing the 312 single-family lots on the site, where we have Lifestyle Communities who are proposing more of a cooperative style development in the north portion of the proposed development. 60 total units there. We'll talk more about those details later on in the presentation. And again, proposed rezoning to R4, which is in our zoning code low density residential, requiring between 2 and 4 units per acre. The proposed net density of this development is, as you can see, 3 units per acre, so within that 2 to 4 units per acre. So I'll split the two separate portions of this development out here as we talk about the site plan. So Pulte, again, the 312 single-family homes. It's important to note they're proposing the large lots on the western edge of the development. These are deeper lots, and they are proposing to preserve a large buffer of the existing mature trees, of course, keeping or maintaining the buffer to the existing residents that are adjacent to that portion of the development. And then, of course, as we moved to the east, I'm going to call it the center of the development, those 60-foot wide lots, standard single-family lots. It will be within an HOA, but again, as we moved just a little bit further to the east, we've got some 50-foot wide lots focused for the active adult or folks who are not interested in doing that snow removal, shoveling here in Minnesota, lawn maintenance. The HOA will take care of that on those smaller lots. And then the cooperative portion of the development, the Artesia Cooperative in the north end, 52 cooperative condo units, as I had indicated, in a 3-story building, and along with 8 twin home units. The site is proposing additional parking, as we typically see with our multifamily projects throughout the community. Most of the parking is proposed as underground parking, but the developer is, of course, providing that guest parking for the additional units. Additional amenities within this particular site include some community gardens and some pickleball courts. I just realized I failed to mention this is an age-restricted portion of the development, so the cooperative, and I'm going to say a number and I'm going to regret it, so maybe I'll let the developer indicate the age-restricted to this portion before I botch that. But meeting the required setbacks for both the three-story building as well as the twin homes on the site. And then, as you can see, an extensive amount of trails providing that connectivity to the Mississippi Landing portion of the development, as well as the other trail connections that we'll talk more about in detail as we move on in the presentation. So the development is proposing two separate access points. I know Ryan had already kind of hinted, but proposing a realignment of 103rd Street. This is the railroad bridge, just to orientate you. Of course, again, aligning or following the county's approved plan as we look to the future and the county's realignment of 103rd, providing cleaner access from Highway 61 to Gray Cloud Island. So that will realign, and the development will access directly off of 103rd. Second access is just a bit further south off of Gray Cloud Trail, Street F. This will also be the access for the city park, which of course we'll talk more in detail as we move along here as well. So back to the sidewalk and trail connections. Sidewalks are proposed on each side of the streets within the development, which is standard for all of our developments within the community. And then the red that you see are all of the trails proposed to be constructed as a part of this proposed development. Those would be all within city-owned outlots, so the city will own and maintain those, but the developer will install, again, providing great connectivity throughout this development to future open space, existing open space, and potential future developments and open spaces in the area. And again, a tree inventory had been completed by the developer for the site as a whole. It's worth noting they are planning to preserve over half of the qualifying trees that were identified on the site. Now, with residential developments, we do only allow for 35% of those qualifying inches to be removed without penalty per se. So in this instance, some mitigation will be required, but it's very important to note with the substantial amount of qualifying inches on the site, the developer is certainly taking steps to preserve and maintain as many of the mature trees on the site as they can. Additional plantings are proposed in the outlot areas and the buffer areas, certainly where they fit and are practical. The single-family lots within the Mississippi Landing portion of the development will, of course, have the 4 trees and 10 shrubs. Aside from some of, like I had mentioned, some of these deeper lots where they're preserving a lot of mature trees, it just doesn't make sense to plant some additional trees in the rear yards of those lots, so there's some flexibility there. And then in the Artesia cooperative portion of the development, they are as well meeting the minimum landscape standards within the city zoning code. Water is proposed to be connected up kind of at the Settlers Bluff, so that water main will extend down 103rd Street to provide that connection. This proposed development does require a lift station be installed. As you know, you come down the 103rd Street hill, so we have to get that up the hill. So that will be a permanent lift station, and then we'll do some connecting to gravity sewer somewhere around that bend of 103rd and Hadley. But I won't get into the details of the engineering lingo of the utilities, but I thought it was worth mentioning just generally how those utilities would work in the area. Couple of different things happening with park. So developers are required, or rather I should say, the city has the ability to require dedication of 10% of the developable land of developments within their community as park, and that is per state statute. So that is where we look at outlot G. So the developer is proposing that dedication of that 10% to the city as a city park area. And that's where most of the active park, as you saw in the master planning process, where that will be in the park area. The city is also working with some funding partners, specifically the county, on acquiring some legacy dollars, as well as working through acquiring, hopefully, some grant money to purchase an additional 19.91 acres, which you see here as outlot E. in the development, so we're working through that process. So I think that's about 34 acres of future city park along the Mississippi River as a part of this proposed development. And then additionally, it's worth indicating the DNR's interest in purchasing an additional 12 acres of the area of the Mississippi Dunes site that they found to be most important to preserve. So they are working with the developer on the purchase of that additional 12 acres as well. And the MRCA, I know you just had this before you recently, so it's fresh in your mind, but the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area, the draft was created by the DNR. The city did adopt that updated ordinance, so it's worth indicating 20% of lands within an RN district are required to be preserved as green or open space as a part of a development of properties that are within the MRCA or adjacent to the Mississippi River, and then 10% within the SR district. So we've kind of spelled out those acres there. The total proposed preservation of green space and open space within the development is about 67 acres. Now, it's worth mentioning that that does include the proposed park area, but even removing that park area, the developer is proposing to preserve open and green space, meeting those 20 and 10% required preservation amounts. And finally, I'll speak just a bit about the architecture proposed. So the Mississippi Landing, again, those single-family or active adult products. There are a wide variety of products, and I'll let the developer speak a little bit more in detail, but it's worth mentioning they are proposing a variety of exterior finishes and a variety of those exterior materials, just breaking up those facades with roof lines and things of that nature. Very standard to what we've seen in the community and the market recently. And more specifically, the Artesia Cooperative, they are proposing brick and shake siding, the majority being the brick. Approximately about 50% of the proposed three-story building is proposed with the Class 1 materials. This is very consistent, actually greater than projects very similar to this that we've seen in the community, where we've seen about a 35 to 40% of those Class 1 materials. So certainly meeting that minimum standard. And I did sneak a photo down here of the twin home as well with that proposed brick material. So with that, a couple of recommendations. I'm available. I know the developer, both Lifestyle Communities and Pulte, is here as well for any questions we can field.
All right, thank you. Before we go to questions for staff, I want to check with any member of the commission who wants to take a break. It is now 9:11. Otherwise, we can just keep going. Keep going? All right, questions for staff. Emily, I have a question for you. So there's, in the Pulte Homes area, there's a large lot area, there's a 60 foot lot area, which is standard, becoming more standard, I guess, in single-family homes. And then there's what was described as an active adult area where it's a 50-home lot. And I think looking at the packet, that there was also some requested changes to the spacing from the lot lines on that 50 foot. Can you walk us through that as well?
Yep, so on those active adult lots or the 50-foot wide lots, clearly the lot is getting smaller, but of course you still need to fit a decent product on there. So they're requesting a 5-foot setback from either side property line, which we saw in the Settlers Bluff development as well for these folks, again, who are looking to downsize, less maintenance. It's certainly a demand that we're seeing in the community, so that's where that proposed smaller setback comes from.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question. Is there other projects with the similar setbacks? So,
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Britton?
So are you keeping the 7.5 feet? Or are you going down to 5? Just
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Britton, so for the 50-foot wide lots, it'll be the 5-foot setbacks, but any of the lots greater than 50 foot wide will require the 7.5.
Okay.
Any further questions? All right, and I think both developers are here, so I don't know which one of you'd like to go first.
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, it's good to be here this evening. My name is Paul Hoyer with Pulte Group. With me this evening is Ben Landhauser from Lifestyle, and we're going to give a presentation that's very short. Emily's staff report was very detailed and thorough, so we're going to try to not retrace any of her steps and focus on some graphics and some high-level things that we hope answers any questions that you might have. Is there a better way to do this, Emily?
Oh, I wonder if you can just scroll, Paul.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
it's okay. So real quickly, we're going to hit a little bit about our companies. We'll talk about the neighborhood and how it really came together. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the homes. It'll be heavy on the graphics, short on the words, and pretty high level. Again, I work for Pulte Group. Ben works for Lifestyle. Lifestyle will be building the co-op. Pulte Group is acting as the developer of the property and builder of all the detached homes. A little bit about us. We build under 3 name brands in the Twin Cities area. You've probably heard of Pulte Homes. We also build under Centex, and this neighborhood will be branded a Centex community. We also build homes under the Del Webb brand, and that really is where the 50-foot lots come in, really targeted empty nesters who the kids are gone, they don't value large lawns anymore. Typically, they have smaller homes, single level, so they don't deal with as many stairs, and they love the homeowners association snow and mow so that the maintenance costs really go down. So that's a major part of what we're doing here, is we're bringing the Del Webb homes into the 50-foot lots here. Ben?
Good evening, Ben Landhauser. I'm the Executive Vice President for Lifestyle Communities and Artesa Development. So a little bit about who we are. It's a great kind of handoff at this point to understand a little bit who Pulte Group is. Lifestyle Communities have been involved in cooperative housing basically since the early 1990s. We've done a number of different brands in that period of time. At the bottom of the slide in front of you has kind of those names down there. Artesa Cooperatives is a new brand that we actually launched last year. We have a couple other properties that are kind of going through the pre-sale process under this new brand of Artesa in Shakopee, Mound, and Golden Valley. We'll be starting here soon. Most recently we finished our last, most recent Zavago community in the city of Stillwater. So another kind of Washington County product that we just opened up at the beginning of this year. Very pleased and happy, fortunate to be part of this project and appreciate your time. I think, Paul, you're going to jump back in.
Yeah, I think I can make this a little bit smaller too. Yes, this is looking better now. Now we're back on track here. A little bit about the neighborhood. You know, when we look at a neighborhood like this, we really have to thread the needle on a lot of different desires and needs that are out there. We have to satisfy the city's master plan in this particular case, zoning ordinances, things such as that. There are a number of physical constraints, whether it's soil, environmental issues, slopes, wetlands, and those sorts of things. They're all playing a factor in how this neighborhood becomes designed. Meeting market demand is obviously a very critical component too. Whatever we build here, we have to know that there's a market for it. And considering neighbor concerns, that's always a tricky one too. So it's a balance of all these different things to try to really thread the needle, as we say. More of the wide range of factors to balance. I think I'll just hit the first handful here. We knew early on that the city really desired some river frontage. So we worked out a way to find kind of the most valuable land to be able to dedicate to the city. We knew that was important to you. We also heard that the city wanted more land, so we tried to work into our plan additional land that the city may be willing to purchase from us. And we also reached out to the DNR and asked them, based on your investigations of the property, which they had investigated in the past, was there any parts of the property that you find to be ecologically valuable enough that you'd want to purchase? And they passed over most of the property, but the very southeastern part of the site, they actually drew a box and said, this is the area that the DNR would like to purchase from you. And we patterned our site plan based on those boundaries. So our plan, which Emily has shown you, Big picture, we have about 40% open space, 372 total homes. I should point out that when we did the environmental study, the EAW, it was based on an assumption at that point in time of 499 homes. So the traffic study, all the impacts that were studied as part of the environmental review were all based on about 117 more homes than we're actually proposing here. And there's pretty broad setbacks from the city, which I think is important from the MERCA standpoint as well, to protect views from the Mississippi River. We worked really hard on the western edge where we have the larger lots. So instead of having all 60 or 65-foot lots there, we widened the lots to 75 to 100-foot wide, and also deepened them, as Emily said, and really worked hard at the grades to try to figure out how we can get the drainage to work without removing more trees. And we're really proud of what we came up with there. And finally, the homes. We'll start with the Pulte homes, which will be branded as Centex, and then Ben will talk a little bit about the co-op. So the 50-foot lots will have these active adult homes that, again, are really the Del Webb homes that we're bringing into this Centex neighborhood. And again, these are the folks who want smaller home, single-level home, less yards, homeowners association maintenance, and they're looking for something newer too, more open layout perhaps than the home that they raise their kids in. So they have a lot of motivations behind purchasing one of these homes. And the other type of home that we will be building will be aimed at single-family homes. And again, a wide variety of architectural elevations to choose from. We do have a monotony code, a non-monotony code, so we have a pretty strict requirement when we sell homes of what floor plans, what elevations, what colors can be placed next to other homes or across the street from other homes. And we'd be happy to share that non-monotony code with you. And again, just reiterating the homeowners association, there will be snow and mow, professionally managed homeowners association for the empty nester, active adult folks. Also, we'll have, on top of that, a master association for all of our homes that will maintain things such as the entrance monuments or the parkway as you drive into the new neighborhood. We'll have a center median. That will be the responsibility of the homeowners association to take care of. So the Master Homeowners Association really is focused on maintaining the beauty of a neighborhood, making it look well maintained. And the sub-association is really pertaining primarily to the active adult homes with the snow and mow. Ben?
Perfect. All right, so maybe the quick 101 about cooperative housing. Anyone familiar already with cooperative housing? So the easiest way we typically talk to people that are new to understanding cooperatives is really related to kind of our most likely competitor of being a condominium. So if you're familiar with condominiums, you have a larger multifamily building and each owner basically has their own mortgage, and then there's some kind of an association that takes care of any common areas, amenities, the grounds, and so forth. The difference here is a cooperative is basically one master mortgage on the entire property, or in our case, a series of buildings, are all under one master mortgage, and then each owner is a shareholder in that cooperative corporation. So very similar, and I think while we're a good fit in working with the Centex product that Pulte Group is putting together, is we're also dealing with an active adult crowd. So similar to where Emily was going in her presentation, we do have an age qualified membership, so we're looking for people that are at least 62 or older. If they travel, someone travels in a couple, you only need one of those two individuals to be 62 years or older for the younger or not age qualified person to join. So it is an owner occupied product. We find really good synergies in kind of what's being thought through with the rest of the Mississippi Landing development about how our product really relates to that. There's a lot of similarities again in kind of who our owners end up being. They're looking to basically downsize from something bigger, move into something that has less responsibilities and maybe more right-sized for their point in life, where they raise their family in their larger home in Cottage Grove or somewhere very nearby. And they're really down to maybe using the master bedroom, a living space, their kitchen, and maybe having a bedroom or two for people that come to visit them, whether that's family or friends and so forth. So we're really coupling this lifestyle movement that our consumers are looking for, with really returning them to a community within kind of our building or series of buildings on this particular site that relates more to kind of what they're looking at doing that's almost a step back. So where most people buy a home when their kids are growing up or they're looking to start a family, they're probably moving into a neighborhood very similar to what the Pulte Group is putting together, with a lot of commonality. A lot of people moving in that either have kids or are planning to have kids, so there's some level of basis of kind of people being in the same generation of life. We are really attracting a product of very similar qualities within our cooperative. So we also do a lot of things with amenity spaces, and I've got a slide here very shortly, just gives kind of a high level understanding of what those are. But really our mindset is shifted when we go from that individual ownership of kind of what's behind 101 or 301, whatever residence you really take personal ownership of, to dealing with this master mortgage. So we're really dealing with people that, instead of describing their home as kind of where they place their furniture, where they go to sleep at night, most of the time our owners are telling us, again, 30 plus years of listening to our consumers, that they really see their home as walking in the front door of that cooperative, whichever door in this particular building that ends up being. If it's a twin home, they're maybe describing that, but they're really going to gravitate towards the amenity spaces that I'll touch on here shortly. As I stated before, we'll have professional management of this building, so we have 2 designated employees. One is kind of a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, a building manager, and then we have another part-time individual that really does maintenance. So we're looking, again, people stepping away from having to take on all responsibilities of home ownership and having someone around that can really help them with any incidental things that happen just to maintain their home. We do a lot of things with reserves on all of our cooperatives as well, so we're not just touching, again, those amenity spaces that may be more typical of condominium development. We're really putting reserves away so that down the line, as things need to be upgraded or changed out, like appliances or flooring, we're touching not just the common areas, but also the individual residences within the community as well. We operate on kind of an ease of entry, ease of exit. So we're dealing with a 40-year fully amortizing master mortgage. So we're driving really initial purchase rates down from what a traditional 30-year mortgage would be. And then we're also building wait lists. So when someone decides later down the road that they either need or they want to move, we have a wait list of people that are available to them that have been interested in the community, and either they didn't age qualify when we were looking to start the building, or they found out about the community and just found that it would be an opportunity when the time was right. So we build that wait list. It doesn't subject people to not use the realtor network that's available to them, but we try to leave basically all of those costs in acquisition up to basically in their pockets as owners and consumers, and make that transition of that share membership as easy and fluid to them as it possibly can be. So on the particular site that we're dealing with in Cottage Grove in the Mississippi Landing development, as I mentioned before and Emily shared during her presentation, we have what we refer to as a main building, or something more typical. If you look at past product that we've been involved in, one multifamily building. In the past, where we haven't had the luxury of dealing with a larger acreage to do a complementary building type of kind of this twin home model, we have in other geographies and other states around the country where we see people that are maybe on the fence. They would move into maybe a Centex or a Del Webb community, but they're really missing that community attribute, or they just want to be closer and less responsibility. They can shut their door and they know that there's someone there to kind of take care of the building itself and not just deal with the snow and mow services that would be offered under the Pulte Group model. So in this particular setting, we have 52 units in a main building. It's 3 stories in height, and then we have 8 homes in total across 4 different twin home buildings that, again, all of those owners are part of kind of the broad master mortgage. They have access to any of our amenity spaces that I'll hit on here in a minute. Range in size of our homes, we do everything from a 1-bedroom den unit that's just under 1,200 square feet up to a 2-bedroom den or a 3-bedroom equivalent unit that's just around 1,800 square feet. So a little bit about those amenity spaces, and each of our buildings are really doing things that augment the fact that most of our consumers are downsizing and having flexibility of greater space in a home that they're leaving while moving into the cooperative. So we have things like great rooms that can be reserved for, Thanksgiving or Christmas, birthday hosting, could also accommodate larger events. We have entertainment suites or game rooms that just allow for kind of real-time use of whether it's pool or tabletop shuffleboard, arcade games, or movie nights, things that they may do in their free time with friends that they meet in the cooperative, or again, hosting people from the outside that come to visit them. We have a hospitality suite, so something that's more, again, gauged for those special events, smaller group sizes. They don't need that great room. We do wellness studios, so we're providing basically a fitness and wellness studio in our space that's available to them 24/7. That business center, it does have kind of that building manager's office, but we're already dealing with people that are maybe not fully retired, could still be actively working. So we have a business suite that really allows them to plug in, bring down and have kind of a workspace or an office to work from in our buildings. And then we do a guest suite as well for just if somebody's downsizing to a one-bedroom den unit, they know that they still have the ability to host friends or family that come to visit them. And finally, we have a makerspace that kind of takes on the personality of every community that we do, whether it looks more like a full-fledged wood shop, could end up being a group of artists that move in. We've had potter's wheels and painting studios set up in that space, but anything that would commonly be done in the basement or a garage setting at your single-family home is what we end up seeing take place in that makerspace. So just a few illustrations of those different product types. So this being kind of a snapshot of half of one of our twin homes. The broad kind of architectural characteristics we were going for in this community was really doing a prairie-style development. We know the city has had basically a desire to keep overall mass and height to about that 3-story and not really overdoing it on scale and magnitude of development. So you'll see both from our twin home and the 3-story cooperative main building, really kind of low lines, really kind of drawing out kind of the horizontal axis and kind of the scale of these to really be more touchable, attainable, and not feel like some behemoth facility of sorts moving forward. So each of our twin homes in particular that we're staring at here has an attached 2-car garage. So a little bit unique from the main building where we have underground parking that's more of an wide open parking garage, a unique amenity that we're really excited about presenting to the Twin Cities market. Just to give you an idea, again, bird's eye perspective of what this site looks like from south looking towards the north for how those buildings kind of arrange themselves towards the wetland. I would say we were also very strategic on where we placed that main building. The majority of the Mississippi Landing site actually drains from south to north towards the wetlands that are on the southern edge of our property. So even though we are 3 stories in height, we're kind of tucked into almost a bowl within that property. So we're really trying to be respectful of the overall context of this surrounding neighborhood and how we place the different buildings around the property. Another perspective, giving you an idea of what it might look like coming into the site from Grove Street South. Again, just seeing the arrangement of how those twin homes relate in height to that building. And this is probably a good illustration if you look on the far right-hand side. Here you can see where that first level of that building is just creeping down from kind of the height of our twin home buildings as you'd enter the property. And then for the main building, again, kind of that southern face or the face that would be orienting towards the Cenex homes in the Pulte Group's development. We have a large outdoor patio, so another one of our amenities is really focused on outdoor living. So we have grilling stations, fire pits, things that are out there, and really kind of promoting the connections with the broader Mississippi Landing development with a series of sidewalk trails and paths around our development, kind of rounding out the broader vision for the Mississippi Landing development. A little bit more of a close-up, just so you can see kind of the level of detail that we're putting into the cooperatives. All of our homes come with an attached screen deck or balcony, and it ends up providing for a little bit more year-round use, which we found has been really well received by our consumer base. and then a look towards kind of the main entry of the building being in this location here. Just gives you a good context. You can think about our property as being kind of a walkout home. So on the north face of our building where our main entrance is, right on grade, so 3 stories in height. Backside of our building kind of steps down and back towards the wetland, so a little bit more exposure of that garage level, but we're working with our civil engineer to make sure that we're bringing grade up on that garage face as much as we can. Not so much to disguise it for the sake of disguising it, but really just to kind of fit it into the landscape more than having it stick out. And then just a few other quick perspectives to, again, give some context to scale and mass of that building. We do an intentional job with our architect on trying to have a lot of bends and twists, so we're not looking for kind of a simplistic building footprint. We really want owners in our building to look out any of their windows and not feel like there's just a continual wall of glass or additional homes, that it does feel a little bit more private and secluded to them. And I'll hand it back to Paul.
Mr. Chair, Commission, that's really it for our presentation. We also have with us tonight our civil engineer, Ryan Bloom from Westwood, in case there's any detailed engineering questions that we can't answer.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Rasmussen.
The general drainage of all this with the river being to the south, and I heard from staff there's going to be an eventual lift station. Can you kind of walk us through how all the stormwater and sewer is going to flow on this site?
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, I think I'm going to bring Ryan up here so I don't get over my head.
Hello, Ryan Bloom with Westwood Professional Services. Yes, and let's see if I can do the mouse here. So, as was stated, the entire site drains from a stormwater standpoint toward the north, and it works itself to the east first as a wetland complex that lies along this side of the property. So we're putting in a mixture of infiltration and stormwater treatment ponds to utilize those ponds first before it outlets into the existing wetland basins. These basins are a combination of wetlands and ponds that were created as part of the golf course, and they eventually outlet right here. So all of that stormwater will still go in that same location. From a sanitary sewer standpoint, similarly, all the sanitary will work through the development up towards the main entrance and will outlet to a new proposed lift station at this location. And that lift station will push the sewage up through a force main all the way up to the top of the hill, similar to Emily's presentation where she showed the off-site infrastructure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we're going to open the public hearing on the application. Again, you have 3 minutes to speak for or against the application. Please state your name and address before you start.
Hi, my name is Nicole Folsom, 10800 Great Cloud Island Drive South. I stand before you, long-term resident of Cottage Grove, Great Cloud Island. I grew up here, went to school here, as my parents did before me. Not only do I believe that this is a huge upset to our community, I think that it's not in our best interest to go ahead with the development. The obvious thing is traffic. I don't believe that the island is equipped for that amount of traffic. All the way around, it's about 7 miles with narrow, winding, 2-lane road, one going each way. As is with the traffic that's already there, there's been accidents down there. My stepmother, her parents, her mother passed away just simply pulling out of her driveway was somebody who crashed into her going 50 miles an hour. The hill that comes down from Cottage Grove to Great Cloud Island, we refer to that as Dead Man's Hill. It's dangerous. The stop sign at the bottom of it that goes underneath the tracks is meant to have just one vehicle go through at a time. Through the years, there has been accidents down there. You know, there's been memorials at the bottom of the hill, all that jazz. With the increase of population, it could only get worse. Along with that, traffic would bring crime, an increase of crime. There's already been reported vandalism to the cemetery that's down in Great Cloud. Trespassing on private property, things of that nature. I do believe it's in the best interest of the wildlife and the natural habitat down there too, is to kind of not have that population increase. Contrary to the plan that's proposed, I would like to implore you guys to maybe consider a proposal to change it back to what it once was, which is a gated community that would not only protect the current residents, their safety with accidents and crime, but also reduce it, what it has been, and protect that natural habitat and wildlife. So that's all I got, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Wolf. I'm from 10744 Great Cloud Island Drive, and I've lived there my entire life. And hello, council. Thank you for this time to talk to you guys. So the area where this new development will come in is a fishbowl, as they describe it. So anything that you will start to do from the moment you unearth, all this stuff is going to run into the water. And I don't think you have any consideration for the damage that will cause from your oil, your land erosion. Those are just a few examples before I even get into the people that have gotten here. So now, let's say you have allowed this building structure to be put up. Now we have double the population of the whole entire area, which was previously stated a gated community. No one's house is pretty much directly visible from the road. It's all like wooded, where the trees are still there. This is before you take everything away, like the trees to put your houses in. You've stated that these people don't want to take care of their property before they have even set foot in their new home. You are providing a service to make sure that they don't have to take care of anything. Therefore, there is a lack of respect to the land that these people are living on. They have zero regard for what happens around them. So they won't bat an eye when they throw something out their window, when they start driving around this area. That does have many deer that run across the road, so I don't think increasing the speed limit to get people faster to the road is safe for anyone. It takes 10 minutes to get to the freeway from the island. There's only one way in, one way out, and that's either through Cottage Grove or St. Paul Park. So now you're gonna say you can guarantee me an ambulance or a fire truck within a reasonable amount of time to actually save somebody's life? I mean, that critical response time is a big deal in this area, and it really saddens me that you guys think this is appropriate. Like I said in my previous time up here, this place is quiet at night. If you hear someone, like a motorcycle that's loud, you can hear it come in and go all the way through. You can hear that from your house. And it's a nice, quiet area, and it breaks my heart that you guys are willing to take this away from us. It's amazing that you guys find this okay. I don't think you understand the repercussions that will even follow 20 years from now before you decide to even add more. So what's next? McDonald's, gas station? I did say this previously before, but I am deeply upset that you guys think this is appropriate. And like I said, they have already stated that the people coming in don't care about what they have. They just want to come in, take, and dump like people do. And it's upsetting because this is a nice area. And before I get kicked out of here, I want to make sure I made my points. Oh, they have also, may I make this last point?
I'm gonna actually ask you to sit down. We're
Okay,
just
thank you.
keeping everyone to 3 minutes. Thank you, though. Anyone else? While this gentleman's coming up, I just want to remind everyone, I don't want comments from the audience. If you're going to make a comment, please come up and stand at the podium and make your comments. That's the proper place to make your comments, please. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you. I'm Rod Hale. I live at 11701 Gray Cloud Trail, Cottage Grove, and just a question on the access I didn't understand. Is there access both off 103rd and Gray Cloud Trail? Yes. Two accesses? Okay. My real concern is the marina issue, or at least the access to the water. Cottage Grove has 12 miles of water frontage in the city limits. We got about 100 feet that's available to the public. So I think this is our opportunity to really provide our public with access to the river in a variety of ways. And I'm concerned, first of all, what kind of activity will that area be developed for? What will it promote? And secondly, how large is it? If you've been down in our area on 100th and Hadley, and now with this project, man, we're going to be swimming in houses. And I'm not objecting to that, but I'm objecting to the fact that we need to make sure that we adequately prepared for that use. I think this is our opportunity to get some public access to the river for our people. And I hope it's available for all Cottage Grove residents, not just to those who happen to be fortunate enough to live in this particular development. The proposal is 13 acres of parkland. Now, I don't quite understand the 67 acres of preservation, whether or not that's in the park. I mean, isn't our ordinance like 10% of development for parks or an open space, or am I wrong? Okay, so I don't think, have you met that then with 220 acres and you got 13 for parks? I don't quite understand that.
So,
maybe you speak to that later if you would.
Yeah, if you just want to ask all your questions and then we'll have staff follow up.
Yes, that's fine, thank you. Then has the developer made any contact at all with the Corps of Engineers? I'm just curious, relative, you're a mile from the main channel, and whether or not you have anticipated doing anything in terms of accessing the waterway to the channel. Right now, that area is only about 4 to 6 feet deep. So I would speak to the public access that we're going to have in this project. More than anything, I'm really concerned that we adequately prepare for it. Hey, we're going to have a ton of kids coming down there with fishing poles, and we better make sure that we've got good access, good service, and something that we can be proud of for a long time.
Thank you very much.
Okay. My name's Sharon O'Boyle, 9300 Great Cloud Trail South. I lived in the stone farmhouse that's on the corner of the property that was formerly Mississippi Dunes until I was 8 years old. As I said before, my grandma owned that property. My family waited until there was a buyer that would that the land use would be compatible with nature, with the environment. A housing development is not compatible with the environment. A housing development the EAW that was done by Pulte showed that the negative impacts of a housing development outweigh any positive dollar signs. This land has a chance of being a state park. This land has already got documented endangered species. It's got the rusty patch bumblebee. It's got some sort of a bat, I believe. It's got different kinds of birds. It's in the Mississippi River Critical Corridor. It's adjacent to the SNA. It's across, also adjacent from the other side with the Gray Cloud Island Regional Park. This land is not suitable for a housing development. Bottom line, they would have to dig out all of the sand because it's a sand. It's not suitable. They can find someplace, they can find another property that is suitable for housing development. Mississippi Dunes is not that property. And with climate change, we know climate change is a fact. This would make it worse. You know, people have talked about the transportation issues, the school issues. My question to Cottage Grove, Pullman Elementary in St. Paul Park is our only school for St. Paul Park and Great Cloud Island. Why is Cottage Grove even proposing that that would be the school for any sort of housing development in that area? I am against this housing development. I will continue to be against it, and I will use my voting power and whatever other power I have, whether that be litigation or something else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shannon Wolf. I live on 10411 Gray Cloud Trail South. I have been there for 28 years of my life. Love it. Very grateful to live there. Appreciate the new neighbors that come in and the old ones. You know, I understand you're a businessman. I get it. If it weren't you, it'd be somebody else. You're here to make money. Understandable. But you are trying to add more houses than there are people on our island. So I think that's where a lot of feelings for me come up out, and why I'm so passionate about this is you're really like changing people that have like been here for a long amount of times, put like their whole family, raised their families for years and years. You're having this huge change, not a small one. You could have had $10 million houses out there, had a nice park, public access to everybody. You're adding more houses than people, and that isn't a red flag to anybody. Well, besides all of us that are fighting for it. But I don't know. I just think that's something to consider, but I believe that you guys kind of already have your mind set on everything. So, but if I didn't say anything, I'd be able to sleep tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bonnie Matter, 6649 Inskip Avenue South. I'm tired, but I have a lot of heart for this particular project. I appreciate your volunteering. I'm volunteering. That's how strongly I feel about this thing. There's something down there that's sacred. There is something down there that's sacred, and that we are going to do this is just abhorrent to me. But, okay. So I know I get 3 minutes. First, I'm going to make 2 comments that I want you to hear, and then after that, I will be moving into things that I want to see about this particular submittal. And believe me, I always have many more than what I can get in 3 minutes. But regarding this particular submittal, 1, the proposed comp plan amendment must be approved by the Metropolitan Council and then adopted by the City Council in the final form before any action can be taken on the zoning and other changes sought in this application, the Pulte application. This process can take as much as 120 days, as stated, from the city's approval of the proposed comp plan amendment and authorization to submit it to the Metropolitan Council. So in other words, we'd be getting done around July 1st, maybe, yeah, as long as everything goes okay. 2, once the amendment is approved by the Met Council and subsequently adopted by the City Council in final form, the Planning Commission could then review Pulte's request, or requests, plural. Under the 60-day rule, the 60 days is told until the Metropolitan Council approves the proposed amendment and the City Council adopts it in final form. In addition, the city has the authority on its own to extend the period an additional 60 days. In the end, the city and Pulte can reach an agreement to extend it as much as needed if they are truly interested in doing a good job. Okay, beyond that, I have a few comments. The Bolton and Mank, February 16, 2022, letter, 14 pages, the issues, I'm sure you looked at that. Very thorough, excellent. I don't know if they've come back with any updates. The city engineer, I would like to know who the city engineer will be assigned to this project. Don't have to answer right now, but I want to know, and I want to know who's going to be accountable. Under recommendations, again, A, the zoning amendment can't move forward until final approval. B, the site plan keeps changing. Every time I look at that map, it's different. Now there's more houses on it, and they're also overlooking the river, and there was supposed to be no blockage of river view. I'd like these maps to be dated with the rev date and something, but they're really hard to understand. I have enough, I really want to see a map with that 103rd Street on it, a map, because this doesn't agree with the Washington County Southwest Arterial Study. I want to see a map that shows how that road runs. Thank you. I've got many more, but thank you.
Thank you. And ma'am, as you're coming up, I know during the comprehensive plan amendment, we had talked about how we didn't get your public comments on the EAW.
Mm-hmm.
My suggestion would probably be I'm assuming you don't want to use your 3 minutes to put those comments on the record. So if you want to send them to staff, they will certainly send them to us.
Sure.
And that way you can make your comments for your 3 minutes now, and then we can get those comments after.
Thank you.
course.
And I apologize for speaking out of turn earlier, but.
That's all right.
Again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an ecologist, but my understanding of the rules, Minnesota rules regarding any changes to a comprehensive plan in the state of Minnesota do require exactly what Bonnie just pointed out. So I have the technical part of it written out here. Even so, the city can't enact an amendment to the comp plan on its own. It can only approve the review of the amendment. Only the Met Council can make the ultimate approval, and only then is the city allowed to take any action on the amendment. This process usually takes roughly 120 days, so the city has no power to move forward with any action on this most recent proposal, item 6.6 on the agenda, on tonight's agenda. So I wanted to point that out, at least that's my understanding as a layperson. I'm also here as a volunteer. I have, as I mentioned, spent countless hours over the last year trying to defend the dunes. I also see it as a sacred place. I am guessing that all of you have had an opportunity to spend time out there at one point or another. I happen to be out there, not on the property, but on the river, looking up at the property on Saturday, this last Saturday, and was just struck by the grandeur of the place and the open-grown big bur oaks and a couple of deer passing through. And, that may all sound corny, but I think back to a camp that I went to when I was 17 years old before I started my career in conservation. And I read a Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold, and his famous land ethic states that we abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we begin to see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to treat it with love and respect. I have been, and maybe tonight even, on the verge of tears at the prospect of this land being developed to such an extent. There's certainly gradations of possibilities. So there's, the one end of the spectrum, the whole parcel is preserved as public open space. That is possible. It's still possible. There were many partners at the beginning of these conversations, county, state, federal, others that I have even just recently contacted again this week who would be willing to work out a deal where this land could be protected. I have personally offered to Mr. Hoyer my willingness to work as somebody with 30 years of land negotiating experience, my pro bono services to identify an alternative location for this project. This location is wholly unsuitable for the kind of development that's being proposed, from the standpoint of soils, from the standpoint of the wetlands. I would also like to just correct a couple of misconceptions that I've heard mentioned several times, one being that the DNR was only interested in 12 acres. Complete crock. Not true. I know this from my work with the DNR, directly working with them to try to envision what would be their best case scenario. It was very different from what we're currently seeing.
Thank you.
So,
And we didn't do that at the beginning because we got kind of sidetracked, but if you could just do your name and address again.
oh, sorry,
That's all
Lisa Mueller, N 5001 810th Street in Ellsworth, Wisconsin.
Thank you very much.
you.
Hi again. Sarah Wers, 8642 Grosse Pointe Avenue South. Couple things. So Mayor Bailey did say in January that the 103rd Street Bridge is unsafe. So I'd love some clarification on that. I know the traffic study said with this development that the stop sign with some warning lights is fine. I disagree. If only one car can go through at a time with this many, this many houses and people coming through, that's not safe. People aren't gonna like it. And then I thought there was not going to be any access off 103rd Street to the development. I thought both access points were going to be off Gray Cloud. So I'd love some clarification on that. And if it is off 103rd, is it east or west of the bridge? And how that would impact. And then, so I've heard many times that the developer pays for things that go along with the development. Are they gonna pay for the bridge then? I mean, that's $8.5 million. So that goes along with the development, right? I don't know. I feel like the community continues to be misled regarding many aspects of this property and the process. Others have said similar things. The city survey, if you've looked at the comments with that, a lot of dissatisfaction with the city council. A lot of people stating they want this land preserved to be open space, and they're not happy that the city council is disregarding resident feedback. We're being ignored. You're politely listening to us and thanking us for our feedback, but we're being ignored. Take some more time to look into this. Mayor Bailey continually and other members of the council have said there's gonna be a regional park on the island soon. No, Aggregate has applied to renew their permit. That's another 5 to 8 years. What's coming up next month, coming to you guys, is a new plan from them to mine under the river on 395 acres of backwater. That's a 20 to 25 year, mining operation. They're not gonna do that for a couple years. They're gonna do it for the long haul. So telling us that we don't need a park on this property because we're gonna have this park on the island, no. It's not happening anytime soon, if it ever happens. So that's frustrating, very frustrating to hear, that we're told we're listening. You're listening to us and taking what we're saying into account, and then you're not. They're not. This can't be approved before the comp plan amendment is approved. So I don't even know why this is on the agenda tonight. What are they gonna do? They're gonna get this approved and then wait and wait and wait? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Olson, 8627 Jorgensen Avenue South, citizen of Cottage Grove. It makes me feel sad when I consider what we're about to do here. But that isn't so uncommon. Things like this happen over time. The whole thing seems to somehow violate my childhood and adolescent memories and adventures that took place right there. It feels like this is a loss to me. And really, it is a loss. Not just for me. Not just for me. The way we manage this loss is what defines us as a community. The landowner presented us with a plan. We pushed back, saying, no, this is not normal acreage, not a normal Cottage Grove development in a field surrounded by fields. This is special. This is right on the life-giving waters of the Mississippi River. We insisted on something better. More land for the scientific and natural area. More land than normal for Cottage Grove parks and open spaces. And perhaps, most important of all, no homes on our river shore. No homes. Instead of new private docks for wealthy homeowners, we will have docks owned by all of us in the new Cottage Grove Park on the Mississippi River. That park will be connected by undeveloped land all along the river from the west end of this acreage to the SNA. This isn't perfect. I wish we could save more of the land for all of us to enjoy. But I think this is the best we're going to get at this moment in time. I recommend approval of this application.
Thank you.
Right, good evening again. Mike Weekman, 10659 Gray Cloud Trail South. I just wanted to request or ask for any commentary that the apparent deviation from the master plan that was approved. And this is particularly concerning the southwest side of the south entrance that's on the preliminary plat. When we were going through all the meetings, the open house, the commentary periods, I mean, I think we went back and forth and having houses on that side of the road. It was one of the small concessions, I think, or one of the small points that was adhered to but from public comment to actually remove houses from that side. And one of my concerns at the open house that I asked about is, what is the plan here? We're going through talking about a proposal, and I get its guidance, but this is a significant change. We're talking about a plan, and now there is another plan, a preliminary plan, albeit, but now there are houses lining that side again. And the point here is really, if we're trying to really promote public access to the park, I just don't see that being the case here. And we're talking about entrance monuments, going through a minimum of 30 houses to get to the river in this case. It just does not feel like a public space. With this being the case, it's hard to see what's currently being proposed here as anything but a space for this community. And that is not one of the goals here. The goal was to get public access to the river. So if nothing else happens, I would reconsider that point and take, heed the advice of the community and what we said, where we at least did not want houses, have a nice tree-lined road leading into that area and make it seem like it is not just for that group. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Barb Schwartz. I live at 8041 113th Street in Cottage Grove. We've lived here close to 40 years. We've been through a great deal. And I'm concerned about the environmental impact and the fact that it was decided that we wouldn't go forward with an environmental impact, that the EAW was sufficient. And if you would all reference Colleen Oberman's article, it was in the Journal, in the back pages of the last week's Journal, and it was taken from the website at the Friends of the Mississippi. And she's talked before the council a number of times. She went through her response to the EAW, and it was so compelling and so well-written that you'd have to pay attention to it. I think it speaks to almost everything that we brought up, and yet all of her conversations, all of her efforts have gone nowhere. So I question too, how much was the environment and the effects on the environment even part of your consideration? You're gonna have lawns in the development. And are you gonna use chemicals on those lawns? Can you guarantee it won't go in the river? Right now, we're deciding we aren't going to have a lawn service for our yard because of environmental reasons. And now, somebody previous to me talked about what happened today. We have 600 credible scientists internationally that are coming together and saying that the temperature of this planet is going to rise very quickly to 1.5, where nothing can be done. And this was an opportunity to keep that open space, something that Cottage Grove can perhaps use as publicity, that we're doing it right. Or if this does go ahead, if it isn't a done deal, which I have some doubts about, why can't those houses work on limiting a carbon footprint? Why can't they all be required to have solar heating? And has any of this ever been discussed? I look at this, I saw this, I opened up the Journal and I saw this picture and reacted much like these other people have reacted. I was heartsick as well. But I think the primary emotion I felt, I was stunned. I couldn't believe that this was going to happen to that land. The land that there's no place else on the river like it. We're gonna just throw it away without deeper consideration? I wrote comments regarding the EAW statement.
Ma'am, I'm gonna ask you to wrap. That was your 3 minutes. All
Okay.
right, thank you.
And I was informed, now this might be an ordinance that you were talking about, Councilman.
That was your 3 minutes. I'm gonna ask you to sit down.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks.
Any additional comments?
Well, can we talk again?
Nope. Thanks for asking that. All right, I'm going to close public hearing then, and then if staff wants to follow up on some of the things we've heard about. And the applicant if they want to add anything else, but.
Chair and members of the Planning Commission, maybe I'll speak first. One of the main items was questions and concerns about hearing this application and where it is in Met Council review and so forth. So we can review the application both here and at the Planning Commission. It just cannot move forward for final plat or any kind of building permit until we get that approval or not approval from Met Council. So it'll be kind of in a holding pattern, whichever way it goes. So that's why it's before you tonight.
Thank you. And I was going to ask about that, and because I'm assuming the city attorney has been consulted about that.
Yes, correct.
And I was noticing that condition number 1 in the recommendation is prior to going any further, Met Council's got to agree. So if Met Council doesn't agree, this all goes back.
This all stops, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think I've got one more that I'll address specific to how we calculate park dedication. And so park dedication, we take out right-of-way as well as areas below the high water level. So for this particular proposed project, I believe it's about 121 acres is the net developable acreage. So when you take 10% of that, it's effectively 12 acres required for that dedication. So that's how we calculate that park dedication. I think there was a question about the access points, and I will use just this image in front of us. So this is, oh, no, it won't let me. Find a better one. Wow. This one will work as well. Okay, so here's Gray Cloud Trail, so that's the furthest southerly access onto Gray Cloud Trail. This access is off of 103rd, but the realigned 103rd, which would meet the county's approved realignment of 103rd with their Southwest Arterial study. So those are the two specific access points. It is on the west side of the railroad bridge. So the railroad bridge is here. So there's that. With that, I believe the rest are specifically directed or better addressed by our city engineer, public works director.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I believe I've marked all the comments. I'll work through them here and I'll try and address some of them together as they were similar in nature. Just in terms of traffic, there was a question about increasing speed limits or a comment about increasing speed limits. There are no speed limits being changed on the roadways in this area as part of this project, whether in the local area or as you go further to the east towards Highway 61. There was quite a few comments about stormwater, impacts to the river, impacts to drainage, and what happens with that. There's two parts to the project. During construction, there's heavy controls, right? They come from the federal, state government. They have to have a permit for the Pollution Control Agency. There's also watershed rules and city rules. They're all enforced during construction. There would be a specific inspector for the project that has to review all of the different mechanism, whether it's silt fence or basins to capture stormwater runoff during construction or erosion control blanket. All the different mechanisms they have to use have to be reviewed continuously on a schedule. There's also a watershed inspector who looks at every project in town. There's also state inspectors who audit projects. So it's looked at very heavily. Stormwater is probably one of the most regulated parts of the project. And also in terms of what it is today for stormwater to the future, if this project were to move ahead, they actually have to reduce. They have to have less stormwater runoff in terms of the rate leaving the site. That's a city requirement. We actually go above and beyond the base requirements of just meeting existing. We require them to reduce. The two things that would maybe be considered pollutants, not really pollutants, but what the state and watershed are concerned about are sediment getting into the water, right? We don't want more sediment, and then phosphorus largely comes from runoff from lawns and roofs and things like that. Those also have to be reduced. So whatever is happening today, there has to be 80% less sediment and 50% less phosphorus, so significant reductions versus what it is today as a golf course. So that's part of not just this project, but any development project, but this one has some additional restrictions in this area of the city to have less runoff rate and volume. Just the amount of water leaving the site has to be less. That's those infiltration basins. We really want water to get back into the ground, which is also regulated and looked at by the state. Is there bedrock? What's the soil conditions like? That's all looked at from a geotechnical engineered and approved by the city and watershed. So I won't go into more detail, but stormwater is by far one of the most regulated parts of any development project. In terms of the bridge, the concerns about it's a stop sign. It's essentially a two-way intersection. Really any intersection that has a stop control, unless you're both going the same way. I mean, if you have a four-way stop, right, it's one at a time. That's how intersections work. This effectively operates as a two-way intersection, and that continues to function, and that will work with this development based on the traffic study, which was based on a higher number of units than what they're actually proposing It's odd because it's a two-way traffic stop, but that's how it is, and that's how it would continue to function. Like I mentioned, the bridge replacement is not required as part of this project. So it's something being looked at separately by the city and county if there's grant opportunities, because if we can get funding to widen the bridge and make that change now, great, but it's not required as part of this project. And then just the general concerns of the environmental impacts, like I mentioned, it's something that's looked at very heavily going forward. The watershed will continue to be part of that during construction and after the fact. I think that's touches everything that was asked about, but certainly if you have any questions, please let me know.
I think the only other thing I had was, there was a question about, since, obviously, we're not far away from the Hastings Dam and the lock system there, and if there's been any contact with Army Corps of Engineers, and if they were part of the approval process that we usually have to send out to other agencies.
Yep, that's right. So in terms, I think that question was, yeah, I did miss that one, more about navigation, and if there was, public access. This certainly is a public park, which that master plan had a public access point. It's definitely not on the main channel. We know it's, shallower back there, and, you wouldn't be seeing some big marina with, large boats, things like that. It's more for smaller boats, canoes, kayaks. So right now with the developer, there would be no work with the Army Corps to do dredging or something of those natures. I think we'd want to fit whatever is at that public access to what you can have for access in that part of the river, which is your smaller boats and things like that.
Any other questions for staff?
I have
Commissioner
one,
Stevens.
thanks. For the stormwater, you talked about the watershed reviewing, so are they the regulatory agency for the wetlands? And then additionally, these plans, they're showing infiltration basins right next to the wetlands, so I'm just curious if that is gonna be, I guess, taken care of for groundwater purposes, or if that might just change down the road to make sure they meet the watershed requirements.
That is correct, that the watershed is the regional government unit. They oversee wetlands, so they have to approve any wetland delineations and, whether there's impacts or not impacts, they look at all of that. The infiltration basins, you're right, they're in that same area, and they're gonna be placed in areas that are, suitable for infiltration. They gotta meet the state rules. They have to have a certain amount of separation for bedrock. You actually want sandy soils for infiltration to promote that water getting back into the groundwater. So that'll be really looked at in detail. What has been, but there's also more work done that we're requesting, specific soil borings at each location, and the watershed will look at that as well. In general, based on their initial soil borings, it all makes sense, but we'll verify that, if the project moves ahead and we continue to look at the construction plans.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any comments from commission? I'll go ahead and take a stab at it then. Again, I want to, as we've had each time this has been on the agenda, I want to thank everyone for coming because everyone who shows up cares. That includes you guys, that includes us, that includes city council. Everyone cares about this community and everyone cares about what's going to happen down there. Certainly none of us sitting in this room wants to see this be a failure. And so that's what these meetings are about. That's why this process has taken so long. This is not the first time that this has been in front of us, and it certainly was planned out and talked about way before it came to Planning Commission. People in the neighborhood down there, I want to let you know, you're not the first people to be worried about your neighborhood changing. And you certainly won't be the last. We see it a lot when developments come in and they kind of change the character of the place. But that's because they're owned by private property owners who get to decide what to do with their property. I want to make this clear. The city does not own this piece of property. The city doesn't want to own this piece of property. And so the city can only do so much with what we can do about the property. The same reason the city can't pass a law saying your kitchen has to be purple is the same reason why we can't say, sorry, Pulte, I know you bought this to build houses, but you got to make it a park. It's the same reason. The government cannot restrict private property holders from doing what they want to do with their property as long as it meets the city rules. And so far from what I've seen, this meets the city rules. They're asking for R4 density, they're meeting R4 density. They're asking for lot sizes that are within what we usually do in Cottage Grove. They've met that. There's nothing else that we can do except for make sure the rules of the government are followed. And so based on that, I think I am in favor of approving this preliminary plat and site plan. The only other thing I wanted to add was there was a question about school districts and about how Pullman is the only elementary school down there, and why, all of these kids are gonna get forced into that one school. That's the school district's business. If you have a question about school district boundaries, go to their meetings, talk to them about that, see what their plans are. The city of Cottage Grove has nothing to do with school boundaries. That's an independent government agency that sets all of that up. So if you're unhappy about how the school district's handling it, go to their meetings. All right? Otherwise, yeah, that's all I have on that. Anyone else? Commissioner Britton?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment that I agree that I find this consistent with planning, zoning, and ordinances regardless of any personal feelings. It follows our guidelines, it follows our comprehensive plan and the long-term visions. And to be fair, I think there's a lot more parkland that we're getting out of this than we've seen in the majority of other developments that we have. So everything's a balance. It meets the rules, and I think the developer is actually going a long ways to making it something that's more than just a bunch of houses stuck wherever they can stick them. I think they're doing a good job to have a quality development and to give us access on the river. So I'm also in favor of this proposal.
Commissioner Fisher?
I just wanted to speak to the school district thing, agree with you. As part of that bond referendum that's coming up, there has been some discussion of drawing of those district boundary lines. So please be involved in those school district meetings as well as that bond comes up, because those things will be discussed, referencing the growth and in certain spots and what may need to be adjusted so that all of our students get what they need, so.
There's no further comment. I'd look for a motion.
I'll move to approve, subject to the conditions stipulated in the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Britton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wright. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to item 7, which is approval of the Planning Commission minutes from January 24th, 2022. If there's no changes to the minutes, I'd look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wright. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to reports. 8.1 is recap of February City Council meetings. I'll turn to Director Costello.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll try and go fairly quickly. So 2 meetings in February. There are a couple of items on the commission that came before you in a Planning Commission meeting. They included Woodward's Pond, 3rd edition, and McCaddy Landing were both approved. So you'll see those developments coming forward. And then on February 16th, we had a public hearing for Hawthorne Pines 2nd edition for a final plat, DA, and easement vacations. Those were approved as well. We had a new commissioner who is joining us, so welcome. Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining. And with that, that kind of covers Planning Commission items. If the Planning Commission has any comments for Councilmember Thede or I, we're happy to take them at this time.
Any questions? No?
Well, I only got a small, If you have any other questions, obviously you know how to get hold of me.
All right, thank you. 8.2 is response to Planning Commission inquiries. We didn't have any from last meeting. 8.3, Planning Commission requests.
I have one request.
Commissioner Fisher.
I have a question about an application that we had approved, and I've seen some of the building for the XL, the new regulators or whatever. We talked a lot about screening on those things, and the one that's near my house, is beautifully brand new, but there's no screening. And so I'm just wondering if that's something that's still in the works, or how, when we set our stipulations and, yes, approval, but this is what we want, how are those things confirmed? And is there gonna be a screen up anytime soon for those big fat pipes in my neighborhood?
Yeah, members of the planning commission, I saw Emily getting up and she can respond if she wants, but my guess is there's supply chain issues. Might be some of it, but she'll share.
I'm not mad. I'm just wondering what, because we see the beginning parts of this
Absolutely.
and a lot of the end pieces, just wondering how those are followed up on.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Fisher, Christine's not wrong. It's kind of twofold, but it's still under construction. So they're still working through it. But I do know that they have in fact had some issues getting their hands on appropriate fencing that was approved for both of those projects. So that will come, but I know there was also some plantings that needed to take place, so.
I know, I'm watching them.
Once this weather turns around, I'm certain that they'll get moving on that. So
Sure.
that's where that is.
Well, I'm certain too, because I'm watching them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Reach out anytime. Yeah.
Thank you.
I know people.
Any other requests from the commission? All right, before we move to item 9, I did want to welcome Commissioner Stevens to the commission, first meeting today, so thank you for being here. And otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, if there's nothing else, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Commissioner Fisher, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wright. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0.